pick it up so that you don't step on it. Hi, everyone. Disclaimer, my son is going to be very disruptive.
What is? No.
He's going to be very disruptive, so if I'm in and out, up and down, all you mamas know what it is.
What's this?
Mamas of toddlers. How disruptive.
What's this?
Stop. Yeah, what's this? Go watch that. Told you he was going to be disruptive. We ain't even 2 seconds in and he's screaming about a fly.
And the bye-bye?
But I'm going to let y'all get up in here. Because I know this is going to be it's probably going to be heated for y'all. It ain't a heated discussion for me. I'm just sharing my perspective. Once upon a time, this might have been heated for me, but I'm a bit past that. So if you come in here heated, there might not be any gas for you, unfortunately. I think I know what you need. 1 second, everyone.
A second.
Okay, so welcome everybody. Having a bunch of toddler disruptions, like I said, but not gonna stop us. So, disclaimer, I typically don't get riled up over political upheaval or trends or any of that stuff, but this one in particular, I guess, prompted me to speak on it because I had my own run-in with potential abortion with this child. With Sharu, it was never a thought in my mind to abort him. I was like, oh, pregnant, we having him. And his father never even muttered a word like, yeah, get rid of him. That just wasn't even in my sphere of existence with Sharu. With this child, a little bit different. So, being that it was something that I just really recently dealt with, I felt like it was worth a share to speak about the things that I work through internally, as well as just my overall perspective of what children bring forth karmically. Being a mother already, this is going to be my second child, so I'm not new to the game. Yes, you can turn it off. So what I'm going to be doing during this live is sharing a little bit about my very brief run-in with potentially aborting. And then I'm going to go through the essay that I wrote on Medium and go through it point by point so that you guys can get whatever clarity you're seeking. I can expound on some points. I can give further context. Y'all know how I do. I'll be as thorough as I possibly can. And if I feel like it, I will open it up for, people to join and talk and chat and all that stuff. But that won't be until the end. So, let's start with my experience. With my first child, Sharu, I was with his father for 5 years, okay? We were best friends. We ran businesses together. We traveled the world together. We slept in tents together. We detoxed together. We healed together. We cried together. Me and Sharu's father had a real live healing ass relationship, and we were both not capping about shadow work and healing, detoxing, just getting all of this right. You know, we were not, anybody that was watching us back then, we were dead serious. And Sharu was made out of that. He was made out of that love, out of that commitment to healing, out of that commitment to looking at ourselves. He was made out of that. Despite any kind of discrepancies, karmic, obviously, because most of the time when you have a baby, you're not really dealing with your own character only. You're not only dealing with your own personality. You're dealing with the bloodline karma that you haven't dealt with, that you might not have even known was there, from your mother and your father, because you're a genetic descendant of the both of them, right? And so when I found that with this, my first birth, Sharu's, I was approached with dealing with two bloodlines. One that I knew nothing about, which would be his father's, and one that I knew nothing about, which would be mine. And I only knew a little bit about it because I have been doing inner work. So the woman, once we start carrying said life to preserve both bloodlines, right? We end up having to deal with all the gunk and the bullshit and the unspoken traumas and the insecurities and the doubts and the disconnections that make up both bloodlines. And so it's essential that you and that individual, beyond, you know, what might meet the eye, beyond what upsets you guys, y'all can come together on that turf and have that understanding. That's extremely important. So a lot of you guys, now, I'm not at all saying that my birth with Sharu wasn't completely traumatizing, but that's for karmically incompetent reasons as well, right? I thought that, oh, I want a natural birth, kick back, minimal movement, minimal to no movement, no shadow work, just sit, eat, and get big, and then he just gonna slide out. That's what I thought birth was gonna entail. So that, coupled with the ways in which I wasn't being real with myself, then coupled with the way my mother birthed me, because remember, I'm a genetic descendant of her, right? And the way her mother birthed her, all that is recorded in the genes. So I'm experiencing and having to work through psychologically, physiologically, and emotionally the things that my mother and her mother didn't deal with. So it's not just my stuff. So I'm having to navigate that. And oh, let's make it even better. His mama too, and his father, and whatever they didn't work through, I got to deal with how that ends up expressing itself through the father, through him, right? So the mother has a large load to bear when carrying said life. And this is why I even said in the article or in the essay that it's not ideal for us to romanticize pregnancy and all that stuff, because it's very karmic. And oftentimes, whatever lesson that we were unable to bring into fruition, whatever karmic thing that we just could not get out of that perpetual loop, when we get pregnant, that's what allows us to transmute that and to do that, right? And plenty of people can do it without that. Monks, people that dedicate their whole lives to connecting with God, yogis, they can do that. But half of us aren't doing that. Half of us aren't dedicated to that level or that caliber of healing and enlightenment. Let's keep it a bean. We all start out wanting to ascend and be ascended masters and go through the dimensions into the higher planes, but we can't even get past judgment. We can't even get past attachment. So we all gonna chalk it up to, we might adapt some of those principles through experience, but we're typically just enjoying the earth experience with grit and grace, right? So that was my first pregnancy. That was my first birth. If you want to see my birth story back when it was fairly fresh, you can see it on my YouTube channel. If you have subscribed for the Collective Womb Alliance subscription, in the Geneva group chat under labor and birth, I think it's under labor and birth, or whichever room dealing with birth and prenatal support or reassurance for new moms, one of those rooms, I put the video in there too for y'all to watch, so y'all can see exactly what I went through. Didn't have the overhead that I have now in that video, but I had a little bit of it, so there's that. So without getting too much into my own business, because I learned my lesson with being deep in the virtual world and telling all my fucking business, right? With this child, I did not know his father that long. We did not build a relationship based off of mutual dedication to healing. He had a more culty, organizational sect thing going on, and I was more free-flowing and trying to be an actual embodiment of the principles that most people that run or lead organizations and sects have. I wanted to embody that and practice that regardless of how I dressed, how I spoke, what I said, what I did. I wanted it to be a quality that I had in spirit, not in appearance or in charisma or in facade or in spoken word and things like that. However, I felt like I was inching more into my feminine, and I felt like I was in a position to finally be led by the masculine. I was given the shot, fuck it. I didn't let my first son's dad lead me. He led me through healing, but I'm talking about in 3D life, like tangible material world shit. I was always doing the leading. I was always the alpha female. I was always the one taking charge and making the money, bringing in the bread, saying what we about to do, where we about to do it, and how we about to do it. I didn't want to do that anymore. I was getting to a point in my life, I had just broken up with a woman, so I was more feminine than I had ever been, and I wanted to be led. I wanted to be able to submit. I wanted to be able to listen to somebody else talk instead of everybody looking to me to listen to me talk, right? I was at that point where I was tired of teaching, and I don't have problems sharing insights and experiences, but I wanted to be taught. I wanted to be led. I wanted to submit. I wanted to experience what everybody had been experiencing through me. So that was more so the basis of my connection with this child's father. Now, I had always watched organizations, sovereignty sects, cults. I always watched them from a distance because I've always had an issue with following people, with listening to people, with submitting to any kind of authority. But because what he was doing was principally in alignment with what I was living, right? What he was speaking about was what I was literally living for the last 5-6 years, okay? I wasn't just talking about how nature is divine. I was in nature. I was in the jungle. I wasn't just talking about how the woman is divine. I was out there in the dirt actually submitting to the great mother, okay? So I was committing my body, mind, and spirit to the embodiment of principles that most people, most organizations, most men only speak about, right? So the reason that I gravitated toward it was because it wasn't the principle. The principle was in alignment. Yes, the principle was in alignment with what I had been living for the last 5 years. And I was trying to become more practical about my application of the things I had learned and actually turn it into something tangible, be it tangible wealth, be it tangible sovereignty, because I was already sovereign in spirit. But I wanted that sovereignty to reflect in my life, be it through traveling, be it through livelihood, be it through exchange and commerce, be it through trade, all of that. So that was more so the basis of my relationship with this child's father. So I felt like it was a beautiful thing where spirit meets masculine practicality, and we come together and we pretty much uplift communities. Of course, that wasn't a part of his agenda. I don't know what his agenda is, and this live is not going to be centered around that. But I know that my agenda is to build communities, hold women, protect women and children, and all that jazz. Because one, y'all talking about pandemics and sickness and disease. It's been a pandemic since before the pandemic with women, children, and family structures, period. The fact that women are in shelters, the fact that children are suffering, the fact that men are abandoning shit before the babies even arrive earthside. One, from a totally 3D level, that's a problem. From a karmic level, it's also a problem. So that means that we kind of have to step in as women and say, okay, what the fuck have we been doing? Why are we choosing these type of men? How do we feel about ourselves to be attracting that type of man into our lives? And why are we settling for shit like that? And how did we get in that predicament in the first place, right? So it's like that delicate balance between honoring what you feel when you experience something painful and also knowing the role that you played in it, be you conscious of it or not. It's your responsibility whether you're conscious of it or not. And it sucks sometimes because this is bloodline stuff that was never yours to begin with. You inherited it. Just like you inherited a certain texture eyebrows, certain texture hair, certain skin tone. You inherit the experiences of everybody before you. It's called epigenetics. Pickings are not slim. I'll get into that later, right? So it's all of that. So sometimes, yes, it's difficult to be like, well, nobody deserves pain, and nobody deserves suffering, and nobody deserves to be raped, and nobody deserves to be molested. But if you actually take a look at the bloodline that you're talking about, that you're speaking about, don't look at the fact that the woman got raped for now. I'm not saying disregard it. I'm saying don't look at that only. Okay, a woman got raped, a woman got molested, a woman got stabbed, whatever. That's the 3D karmic manifestation. Now, take her, put her over here, sit her right here. Go look at her mother. Go look at her father. And I'm not saying look at don't be indoctrinated about this now, because that's where the discrepancy and the dissonance is going to happen, if any, in this space, right? Look at the mother, look at the father, look at the grandmother, look at the family paradigm, okay? Look at the spiritual connectedness. Look at the karmic competence. Look at the lifestyle. Look at how in tune they are with themselves and one another. Look how much they have basic level dignity, integrity. Look at the family structure from a karmic and spiritual lens, and you will get your answers. If the mother was disconnected from herself, had no self-respect, didn't teach the child, wasn't able to you'll see why she was so unaware or so unconscious or whatever the trait was, right? To land herself in a situation like that. Not that she chose to. I'm not saying she was outside butt naked and got raped like that. She could have been in a turtleneck and still got raped. But the fact that that experience manifested means that the emotions, the pain, the suffering, the bloodshed, all of that stuff is going to make her experience the full spectrum psychologically, physically, and emotionally of what her mother and her grandmother didn't want to feel and didn't want to deal with. Okay? I'm going to say that again. She didn't just walk into a situation and set herself up. Some women do that, but some women don't. And those are the situations that we feel the most, oh, I got to fight for this woman's rights. Listen, the way karma works is not based on your feelings. The way karma works is not based on what you prefer, because if we left it up to our feelings and what we prefer, look at the world now. Look at what we're doing with our feelings and our emotions now and our willpower now. If it was up to our human will, we'd be fucked, okay? So karma, right? The way karma influences certain things to manifest and animate in our lives, in our bodies, right? That's not going to be based on our preference. That's going to be based on the unique compilation of what you inherited from your mother and father that you may or may not be conscious of. And it's going to make it so unique and so precise and so perfect for you, to the point where you can experience without a choice. I mean, you can have a choice, but without a choice, is like, that's how it feels. Like you're suffering, you can't change it, the pain doesn't go away. You can tuck it away. That's a choice. But it kind of leaves you choiceless in the sense that you have to go through it and you have to feel it and you can't escape it. Or you can, and then guess who got to deal with it after that? Your daughter and your son and everybody in your fucking life that might be evolving and expanding or not, or everything in between. And they need you to hold a certain level of space, but you can't, because you haven't evolved in that way, because you haven't allowed yourself to feel the full emotional, psychological, physical, mental spectrum of whatever came up from your bloodline. Okay? So just to bring it back for a second, bloodline karma does not animate based on what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, what's up and what's down. It's not, duality is not a thing in karma. Karma is karma. If your personality construct, let's say you're stubborn, let's say you're fear-based, let's say you got all these different boxes and paradigms that you exist in, the karmic interference that's going to come to break them shits so that you can actually learn the lesson are going to be things that attack those beliefs, paradigms, etc. directly. And it's not going to seem good. It can be extreme as fuck. You can get into a car accident. You can have an abortion. You can have a miscarriage. You can get abused. You are learning your ancestry through your experiences. Y'all all on Ancestry trying to find locations and places and names. Look at your life experiences. That is your whole bloodline right there in front of you. That's your bloodline. That's not a coincidence. That's not a freak accident. That's not the world is fucked up and racism and all that. Even racism, that's karmic. It's karmic. There is a group of people that have never experienced it, and they could be black as night, dark as night. And then there's another group of people, also dark as night, that do experience it. Why do you think that is? Maybe one person's bloodline completely gave up their birthrights and another person's bloodline didn't. So they don't attract the same types of experiences, which is where timeline conjuring comes in, right? So timeline conjuring is pretty much when you sit there and you watch the news, or you read a history book, or you watch a documentary, or you do any of that stuff, right? And then you, remember, I said in your genes, this is epigenetics, everything is recorded. Your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, if she got raped, that shit in your DNA. So if you laying in the bed and you scared to sleep at night because you feel like somebody might break in and rape you, but you've never gotten raped, yeah, that's great-great-great-grandmother Lucy that got raped. Recorded in your DNA, right? So let's say you're watching a documentary. This is what timeline conjurings are, or where ancestral possession comes in, okay? You're watching a documentary and a woman is pretty much getting raped. And you didn't really have any previous convictions about rape prior to that, but you watch it and you just get overcome with emotion. Emotions that aren't linked to any of your waking life experiences. And now all of a sudden you want to be a fucking feminist freedom fighter for women that get raped, right? You don't ever stop to think that that shit might just be one of your ancestors trying to vindicate themselves. So, right, you can pay off karma in a couple of ways. You can pay it off through breath and increasing your prana reserve and integrative movement, or just being out in nature, because when you're out in nature, you don't got to do all that extra shit with the practices and stuff. But because we choose to live a semi-disconnected life, we have to integrate practices into our lives to make up for where consistent elemental nature would have been present, right? That keeps your subtle bodies clear. That keeps your karma clear. But now we got the Wi-Fi, we got the phone poles, we got the 5G. So we got to do a little bit of extra shit to keep our karma clear, right? So now, right, because karmic checks and balances are fucked up. So you're not paying it off through breath and stuff. Let's say you still live in the inner city. Let's say your breathing is still shallow. Let's say you barely move your fucking body and you just go to your 9 to 5. You're going to become convicted, and the genetic experience that was encoded on your DNA from great-great-great-great-great-grandmother Lucy is going to activate, and it's going to want to animate itself. Because it's still a form of consciousness. And all consciousness wants to do is express itself. This is on every end of the spectrum, from thought forms and spirits to moods. Because that's getting into our telekinetic abilities. And a mood can evolve into a spirit and an entity over a long period of time, depending on how much the person charges it. But that's a different conversation for a different day. Okay? So, that ancestral thing, right? The ancestor, right? Let's take it like possession. Will take over your vessel, right? Via that conviction. And you will live your life to do what she couldn't do. To speak up in ways that she couldn't speak up. To fight in ways that she couldn't fight. You don't have to do it like that. But sometimes the conviction is so strong, and if you don't know yourself well enough, you can't separate what's your ancestors and what's yours. That's why it's so important to learn yourself and study yourself, because you can know what's your raw essence and what's some shit that's been expressed in your genetics, right? So if you don't really know yourself that well at a core level, possession is, you can get possessed easily, right? And now you're animating all of whomever's ancestral shit through your life, and it might even kill you. But some people snap out of it. I've lived 10 different ancestors out in one lifetime. Some of y'all that have lived in this state, that state, had this identity, that identity, was with that philosophy and this philosophy. You're living out probably 60, 70 different niggas in your genes and don't even realize it. And people from the outside looking in call it you trying to find yourself. But oftentimes you are getting possessed by an ancestor. And oftentimes the convictions and the gifts and the insights and the power that those ancestors had is too tempting to not embody. Let's say you came from a point where you were never empowered spiritually. You didn't have any spiritual insights. You were fearful. You didn't have any inner strength. And then that ancestor or that genetic expression of that ancestor comes. You get possessed by them. And now all of a sudden you're super powerful. You're fearless. You got all this fight in you. You suddenly have this knowledge of herbs that you didn't even fucking have before. You suddenly know how to do things that you didn't know you knew how to do. All of that, right? Most people are not going to want to accept that it's them, but it's not them. And that they don't have to animate that whole ancestors' vindication story, if you will. If it's pleasant and it's calm, cool. But sometimes it's extreme. So a lot of times looking at things with men and women and cult leaders and tyrants and all this shit, a lot of them are possessed by ancestors as well. And just because they got brown skin don't mean that the ancestor they're possessed by has brown skin, if you follow. Right? And I'm not just talking about skin color. I'm getting at a principle here. Just because a person has brown skin, right, doesn't mean that the ancestor they channel or are possessed by had brown skin as well. Remember, we was getting raped or we was consensually fucking the Caucasians or the hybrids or whatever, right? We're not talking about skin color anymore. That's just what? Random selection. The gene codes express the genes. The genes don't have a race. That's why you got Caucasian women out here farming better than half of y'all people that are calling yourself aboriginals. That's why you got Caucasian women, Spanish women, copper women, gold women, whatever other race of women that are not black, as y'all would call it, or aboriginal. They're animating aboriginal gene codes. And then we got people with brown skin animating Caucasian gene codes. That's where that saying comes from that says your skin folk ain't your kinfolk. It's about genetics. It's not about skin color. That's why I said the skin color game, racism is a karmic construct. You go through it, you empower yourself beyond it, you let it go, it don't even fucking affect you anymore. That's an insecurity of somebody down your bloodline that you never dealt with. You might hate white people right now because a white person might have fucked somebody in your bloodline up so fucking bad that anger just isn't going to just disseminate that easily. Right? And it might take up this whole waking timeline for you to get over that. It might take 50, 60 different timelines for you to get over that. Right? Or sometimes you can go deep into nature and it brings all of that shit up because you don't have all these interferences. The Wi-Fi, the distractions, the TV, the psyops, all of the different things that want to conjure you back to a specific timeline. And let me get on to this. News stations, right? Let's get into that spiritual agenda. Y'all always talking about it as spiritual warfare, but let's get into the details, right? If we got a timeline where there was a massacre, right? Where a large number of people got fucked up. And then they put out a certain newscast or documentary that has a certain vibration to it, that says a certain thing in a certain type of way that touches a certain kind of precise historical basis. All of those souls that was on that timeline from that massacre gonna fuck around, that gene code gonna activate, and they all gonna go crazy at the same fucking time. Now, you have a reason to lock down the country. So a lot of that shit ain't even on some purely conscious level. It's triggering the genetics. It's triggering the bloodline shit. So that's why it's your sole responsibility to take advantage of what your bloodline has going on so that you don't just get possessed by a random ancestor, so that you don't just take whatever an ancestor tells you and do it because you don't know what fucking ancestor it is. You have to use your instincts with your ancestors too. I have some dark, twisted motherfuckers in my bloodline. I remember one point I was doing all kinds of, I don't even know what the fuck it was because it wasn't mine. I had crystals. I was putting them in all kinds of formations. I was doing all kinds of rituals. I never read none of them shits in a book. I don't even know where the fuck I got that shit from. I was fresh dropout out of college. And straight up, didn't know who the fuck I was, so I got possessed, right? And I was doing all kinds of shit. And I remember there was a point where the one part of my core essence that I was in touch with was like, don't do that. Don't do that. I know it looks cool. It's different. It's new. It seems like it's just inspiration. Because sometimes you just think it's inspiration. I could have went down a whole dark rabbit hole. Y'all think I do witchcraft right now? I don't do witchcraft. I was about to be doing witchcraft. Real shit. And some dark witchcraft. That's why y'all think I do it now, because y'all probably have instincts that are activated that can see it in my bloodline. It's there. Why do you think I'm able to articulate concepts with this much precision? I have a lot of dark magic workers in my bloodline. And once I learned who I was, I got to make the choice that I didn't want to fucking vindicate them niggas. I could pull from some of their insights, but you stay in a passenger seat. You got to control your vessel on all levels, as far as your nervous system, as far as your genetics, everything, as far as your breath. That is your sole responsibility, okay? So, coming back to this child, right? I didn't have the bond with him that I had with my first child's father, right? We had our shit. We still cool. I still love him. He took me out of probably one of the darkest places I was ever in. So I will never hate Sharu's father. Sharu's father is my homeboy, right? And we actually went through some shit. And he didn't just abandon me because I had a differing opinion, or because I was speaking up for myself, or because whatever. We definitely bumped heads, but he didn't throw us in the garbage because of dissonance, okay? So with this child, I felt like, yes, we're going to take everything that I learned in the fucking jungle, and we're going to take this practical application of this thing, and we're going to smash them together, and we're going to fucking, same narrative, save the world, right? Or whoever wants to be saved, right? And eventually, as I suspected, I was hoping wouldn't be the case, but as I suspected, this was yet another culty thing that had no intentions of embodying the said principles that it was supposed to reflect or hold true to. And it was just another one of those things where you siphon energy and all that jazz. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, maybe if I, bring forth my teachings, shadow work, eye readings, shamanic work, all the stuff that I've simultaneously went through and embodied and mastered in some regards, maybe if I bring that into these lower planes, essentially, because that's what they were. It was very dense. I don't remember being in that dense of reality constructs, but I had no problem timeline hopping to denser reality constructs. But where I fucked up was I got stuck there. And y'all know all about this. You know how you could be on a higher vibration, so to speak, and you're not restricted, and you manifesting, speaking shit into existence. Channels are all clear. Body feeling light. If some karmic discrepancy needs to animate itself through your body, it does so harmoniously, whatever. But on denser planes, not so much, right? So I don't have that many contracts in lower planes. This child's father did. And that was the fucked up part, because it's like he had access to higher planes like I did. And when he did go to those higher planes, that's where we met. And that's where we bonded. And that's where we spoke. And that's where we made love. And that's where we had an understanding. But most of his karmic contracts were in the lower realms. So when you have contracts in the lower realms like that, it's your responsibility to sever them. And most people don't want to do that. When I moved to the tropics, when I changed my diet, when I was trying to change my name, all those different changes that I went through were my way of breaking certain contracts. Cursing people out, speaking my truth, locking my hair, not giving a fuck about my appearance. I was severing all types of contracts, sometimes 50 at once. And it comes with ego death. And it comes with real shadow work. Not just talking about, oh, this is a thing that makes me feel triggered. No. A full physiological feeling, like you fucking release all the indoctrinated artificial shit and you feel naked, like you're about to get killed any second, like you're completely naked and vulnerable, like a newborn child again. It's a full body experience. And so when you have contracts in lower realms and you're trying to elevate to higher realms, or even integrate the two, you got to break those contracts. And you got to be willing to let go of whatever ego stroking that has been happening in those lower realms, because that's mostly what they do, because they don't have any real power yet. So they need the ego to give themselves the illusion of power and control. You have to break those contracts, right? So that you can elevate and attract the people that can comprehend your message, that can reciprocate what you're putting out, that can pour into you to where you're not feeling drained, so on and so forth, right? I did that over the last 5 years. This child's father didn't do that yet, and actually wasn't willing to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But now we have a contract. And not even only that, I've entered a contract with you, and inevitably so, a contract with all these other entities and shit that you're dealing with. To the point where I stopped watching porn years ago. He was an avid watcher of porn. I started watching porn one night and was like, whoa, what is this? And so when I do shadow work, like I tell y'all in the fulfillment code, I don't just, I submit to whatever entity because I want to understand it, right? So watch the porn, submit to it, gave into the urge. And when I tell y'all, after it happened, it was like I was aroused and then I wasn't aroused. It was like a switch. And then I closed my eyes and there was like 40 different entities, and like the images of them flooded my head. Most of them were sex entities, obviously, but so many of them just flooded my mind's eye. I have a very clear mind's eye. I get visuals like a motherfucker, auditory shit too. And I was like, almost like on information overload, like what the fuck is all of this, right? Because when you try to banish entities, you attract more. You don't banish them. You got to kind of alchemize it. And to alchemize it, you got to take a little bit of it in. This is what they're not going to tell you. But that's how I was able to release them, because if I was to banish them, they would have clung to me more. Usually you banish out of fear, out of not wanting certain, just resistance. Resistance is not a good thing to utilize in alchemy. Let me just tell y'all right now. It's not. Right? So, and that's why exorcisms in the Christianity way also don't work, because it's dealing with resistance and banishment. And it has no space for integration and compassion, right? Or openness, or letting things express themselves, but not letting them attach themselves to you and cling to you. And the more you don't let it express itself, the more it tries to cling to you, right? So when I saw that, I was like, damn. And I started to, and this was before my pregnancy started to really weigh in on me, but I was like, do I want to carry all of this? Because for years, I've done shit like this. I've always alchemized people's entities and dealt with exorcisms, whether the person knew I was doing it or not. Half the time, they might just think they're in a bad mood, or they don't even fucking remember the shit. All types of shit. I've been doing this for a long time. But once I got pregnant, I didn't have the capacity to do it anymore. I didn't have the capacity or the energy or the anything to do it anymore. And I started to reevaluate what my boundaries were, what self-love was, the basics. And eventually I realized that I was taking on a big load that wasn't mine, and all of the lower plane residues and karmic filth that wasn't mine. And just because I know how to alchemize it doesn't mean that it's my job to alchemize it. Just because I'm the one that knows how to work with it through breath doesn't mean that I have to condemn myself to that, right? So I had been taking notes and observing everything, and my first trimester was hell. When I tell you, I lived through the worst of my bloodline's karma. The worst. And this is shit that I thought I transcended, last year? But I was running from it. I was like, oh, I ain't got to deal with this. Bye. I was so sick and so helpless with this first trimester that I was forced to sit in environments and with people that did not honor me, that did not fuck with me. And I swear to God, I was tortured. And the people didn't know they was torturing me, and they weren't trying to torture me. It was a karmic animation. And pregnancy in particular brings all of that shit. And there's no fucking running from it. That's the crazy part. There's no running from it. I can run from it when I'm not pregnant. Oh, what? I'm packing my shit up. What? Yeah, fuck you. Blocked. You can't do that shit pregnant. And if you do, you're going to experience 29 levels of hell. If not more. Right? And all people around you, especially if they're not conscious people, they are going to bend directly to whatever the karma is influencing them to do. These could be nice, giving, loving people. And if you got a thing in your field that's like, animate me so you can release me, that unconscious person is going to become that devil just so that residue, that karmic residue can be released. I used to do it all the time. The only difference was I was conscious. So when a person, like for instance, there could be a girl sitting there and I will have a split. If you're a shadow worker, you know what I'm talking about. I will have a split. A part of me would just be like, oh, she seems cool, nice, whatever. You know, I have little things that I see, peep about her. But then another side of me would be like, yo, treat her like shit. Tell her she ain't shit. It'll just be a consciousness. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, I don't know. And it'll be a conviction too. Now, if I was unconscious, I probably would have went with that consciousness and just treat her like shit, talk to her any kind of way, not show up for her, whatever. Because that's what's in her subtle bodies. That's what her karma is showing. But I'm aware of myself, so I can pick and choose whose shadows I want to reveal, who I want to embark on with triggering shadow work with. Or I can just step out the way. That's not my business. I don't want to contract with you. And this is what people be talking about in these sovereignty movements when they're like, I don't want to trade. You need a search warrant, whatever. Everything is trade and commerce, even in the spirit realm. And so I'll see the individual. And before I was just like, remember when y'all follow me and I was on my dark goddess shit and I was like, yeah, cause I'll gut a motherfucker and I draw out your shadows. I thought I had to do it to everybody. That's why everybody hated me. Literally, I knew exactly what to say, exactly how to look at you, exactly the tone, even in the vibration of my voice. I knew how to draw that shit out. I had people wanting to kill me, death threats, wanting to fight, the whole nine. Because I was just drawing out their shadows, right? So, back to this situation, right? Every shadow, every karmic residue, everything that I just had not dealt with that had me stagnant. Because before I got pregnant, I was trying to move forward and I was trying to be inspired and but I was literally stuck. I was stuck. And then I felt pregnant before I got pregnant. I was sleeping a lot. I felt nauseous. All this shit. Because you can get pregnant without getting physically pregnant. You only get physically pregnant when you can't hold the cold that's trying to come through to you. And I wasn't allowing that cold to come through to me. I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't being present. I wasn't doing none of that. So it came in the form of a baby. Right? But sometimes it doesn't. So, Miala, I'm going to answer your question in a second. But, matter of fact, y'all comments going too fast. Let me answer this now. I wondered if this is the same for women who are pregnant and the man is treating them like shit, cheating on the woman. And she feels like she has to sit with it because she's pregnant and the baby is manifested. Hell yeah, same thing. Same exact thing. It's just that I'm more unconventional, so mine didn't animate in that way. It animated in that way with my first pregnancy a little bit. But, in this one, it was family members. I mean, literally, they are just like empty cedars. Like whatever my karma said do, they just did it. And I was like, damn, we can't even talk about it because you're not conscious. I mean, aunts, uncles, relatives, they were just treating me like I was literal garbage. I had never experienced that from those family members before. And that's why I told y'all I had to actually get physical with one of my relatives while pregnant. And that wasn't her in there. That was some other nigga. Right? So, it was just hell. A lot of vomit, a lot of helplessness, a lot of crying. My support, the support that I had was relative on either fucking or doing work or, giving my spiritual insights. I was literally being milked and didn't think I was being milked because it was validating a part of me that obviously still wanted validation. Save y'all questions or put them in the question bar because I don't want them to get lost in the thread. So it was just fucked up. And because of and this is where it's important to know that even when you're gifted, like Miala, I'm sure you can relate. If you're gifted spiritually or if you're a woman of high spiritual caliber, you're not exempt. Just because you understand what's happening and just because you can articulate what's happening doesn't mean you're exempt. at all. People used to ask me all the time, like, okay, so if you're a seer and you know all this stuff, why don't you just avoid it? I would have to become a yogi to avoid it. And even then, I wouldn't be avoiding it. I would be working through it on a purely internal level. And I probably wouldn't have to manifest it like this. But I don't want to live that life. I'm okay with living in the earth realm with grit and grace. I'm okay with duality, even though it's painful. And then people that are purely in the 3D, just like these people that are like, women didn't deserve rape and incest, principally speaking, those same mentalities were like, you didn't deserve for her to treat you like that. You didn't deserve for her to put her hand around your neck while pregnant. What the fuck is wrong with her? You didn't deserve to be talked to like that. But I did, though. Not because I'm a bad person. Not because I did anything to third dimensionally deserve that. Not because I did anything in my waking reality to deserve that. But because somewhere in my bloodline, somebody lost their voice. Somebody ain't fully speak up for themselves or defend themselves. Somebody didn't see the value or the worth in what they brought to the table. And you can take that as deep down the rabbit hole as you need to. So if that discrepancy was stopping me from getting to another rank in consciousness, guess what situation got to animate itself? Not the one that I want. If it was up to me, you know how I would have learned? Shit, I would have probably did something way more lax. You know, something that might have hurt my feelings or something. But I for fuck sure wouldn't have had the woman that raised me put her hand around my neck. That's not what I would have thought about. That's not what I would have, the one mother figure that I thought I had, because my mother transitioned when I was 2. I wouldn't have created that for myself while pregnant and vulnerable to experience. Why would I do that? The same way a woman that got raped wouldn't do that. The same way a woman that was a victim of incest wouldn't do that. But it's not about what we want. And it's not about what we like. But we're so far removed from this level of karmic competence. Our karmic checks and balances are so off and fucked up. That shit is about to get real. It's already getting real. It's already getting real. So you can sit here and you can call this message what you want to call it. I'm just relaying a message for y'all to get with the fucking program. Because take it like this. We had an organic system of checks and balances when we spent most of our time in nature, okay? You can talk about that on whatever timeline you want to. Be that the timeline before slavery, the timeline where you was an aboriginal, indigenous person, the timeline. It can be any lifetime timeline, whatever. We're not going to get into the specifics. But when we were more organic and instinctual, and the natural algorithm of our subconscious was intact and not programmed with indoctrination and all that other shit and dogma, our karmic checks and balances were good. We actually had an unconscious instinctual understanding that sacrifice was necessary. And the more that we descended from that instinctual knowingness, we move further and further and further away. That's why I say people that practice voodoo and hoodoo and stuff, they're still more connected to that consciousness. When we were in that density and we still needed to utilize animals for sacrifice and stuff, now we can do it with our telekinetic minds and stuff. But if you can't afford that spiritually, you do need an animal. If you're too indebted, you got to borrow credit. Sacrificing that animal, any kind of blood sacrifice, that's making up for the life force energy that you can't afford to have yet. You don't have that prana yet. All of my yogis out there, take this in context and apply it. Right? You don't have enough prana to afford you that life force. So you have to pay for it in blood. Back in the day, we used to do that shit consciously through animal sacrifices and shit. Sometimes a woman would lose a baby and the elder on the land knew why she lost that baby and was shaming her through that. Guess what has to happen now? Fucking freak accidents, fucking traumatizing hospital experiences. They're managing our karmic checks and balances. And I'm not mismanaging. Hospitals, anything corporate, corpse, dead. It's not spiritually alive. Boop. The most, right? These corporate entities, because of whatever contract that our ancestors or us, yes, on whatever timeline, signed and consented to. And remember, consent isn't always, yes, this is what I want. Sometimes not saying shit is consent. Sometimes giving your energy to it is consent. Right? And that's why you have those savage tribes where niggas come on their land and they just behead them. They're not trying to trade. The person that got beheaded got the message. Right? Everything is trade, commerce, and contracts in the spirit realm. And they've tried to replicate that in an artificial way. And that's what you have as the America we all know and hate. Right? So they've been mismanaging our karmic checks and balances. And we have become so pacified by that mismanagement that when they take away said mismanagement and the balance beam has to do this for a couple of years before it's back here, we mad about it. But how else is harmony going to get restored? Right? So, this is why people like Bob Marley, when he died or when he was dying, guess what he said? Don't take me to no hospital. Instinctually, he probably couldn't have broke it down like I broke it down. He probably would have said some simple Rasta shit. But instinctually speaking, he didn't want to go out through the mismanagement of some disconnected shit that was going to sit there and have him on a respirator or some life support thing that would be preventing him from making whatever sacrifice that he was for his bloodline, which would have been organic, natural transition, which is not death. Because death and life, that intimate thread that ties the two together, we're completely ignorant to it now. To the point where we're fighting for physical life and denying spiritual life. That's what we're doing now. Nah, women should not be dying. Some of them should be dying. You think that just because a woman is a woman and she's kind, that she deserves life? Sometimes, according to that bloodline karma, no. Sometimes a miscarriage might bring things into balance. Sometimes an abortion, herbally, where she still gives birth, right? And I'm going to get into that with the article more so I'm not going to lean into that right now. Sometimes that car accident where she breaks that leg is necessary. And then guess what? When all those new things start coming up that she never even cared about or thought about before, after that car accident, after that miscarriage, when she starts reflecting on aspects of herself and life that she never even gave a fuck about, when she starts reconnecting to her soul, be it out of pain or not, maybe pain was the only fucking way it would have happened, right? She's able to live out the full spectrum of her bloodline karma. Now physically, you don't have to do it physically, but we're a little behind. So a lot of y'all still gonna have to animate shit physically, right? You can do it purely psychologically. You can do it purely emotionally. That's what ayahuasca is in plant medicines. You're not taking the medicine and then going out and getting into car accidents, are you? No. You're taking the medicine and you're sitting there and you're living out all of your karma. You're vomiting it out. You're screaming it out. You're crying it out. You're shitting it out. All of that. And you don't have to animate an actual situation. It's just you and the medicine, you and yourself. That's possible. That's possible. But look at where we live. The alchemy setup is a little bit different. So, I'm going to tie this pregnancy story up and then I'm going to get into the essay and then I'm going to close out. So, it got to the point where, you know, like I said in my caption, every time there was a disagreement, or the second disagreement was when he was like, get rid of it. Then get rid of it. Like it was just a thing that I could just do, that I just should do because, hell, he can't do anything about it, right? And I was going to do it. And I never felt anything like this before. It was like every time I thought of this baby, I just sobbed crying. I just sobbed crying, and I just couldn't stomach the idea. And I remember I told him, like, after one argument, I was like, I can't kill this baby. I want to. I'm not gonna lie. I want to get rid of it and have a choice to be done with you and have a choice to not have to deal with you for the rest of my fucking existence. I would love that, sir. Forget it ever fucking happened, clean slate. But I already gave you my body. I already took on some of your karmic contracts. I already started animating and clearing out some of your bloodline karma. And the less and less that you want to deal with it as the father, the more I have to deal with it as the woman. Surprise! Yeah, when you abandon the woman emotionally, you leave double, triple the work for her to do. Right? And sometimes that theme coincides with the theme in your bloodline. So they just a tango in. Right? And so even if I terminated my child, that doesn't mean that the karmic theme was going to vanish. It probably actually would have exasperated it. Right? Because guess what? Now I don't have the life that was going to continue to animate these lessons and bring out these dormant parts of my bloodline that needed to be worked through and things. Those dormant things are still going to be there. I'm going to fuck around and I'm going to feel them. And I'm not going to actually have a channel or a conduit to get it out. To the full capacity that I would have with the child? Probably not. And so I'm going to have to live with that. With that stunted version of myself. That underdeveloped, that spiritually underdeveloped version of myself. I'm going to have to live with her. And know that there could have been a very, 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 very sacred death of this version of myself. That would have brought me everything that I had been begging for. The connection to God, the level of self-love that would have brought me abundance and prosperous situations that I just couldn't seem to get without busting my ass for. This baby is gonna give me that. Not literally like, Mom, here you go. But the things that, like, the baby orchestrates everything happening in your reality. Where you choose to live, if you listen to the baby, that is. Right? It's a very unique cosmic and karmic composition and relationship that you have with the child. And it's a dance. A lot of it is instinct. Very little of it is logic. And it's an intelligence. Right? Put your questions in the question box, guys, because I'm going to lose them in the comments. And I'm going to get into rape and incest because y'all just fiending for me to cover that. But that's in the essay, so I'm saving it. But I told my midwife I wanted to abort, and I just kept trying to, okay, they're going to put me to sleep. They're going to lay down. They're going to get it out of me. And then I was like, man, fuck a clinic. I was going to go to an herbal woman. Right? And she treated, and this blew my wig back. And this is why I said, the problem isn't abortion. The problem is the way we're doing it. The karmic irresponsibility of how we're going about it. The clinic don't give a fuck about your karmic spiritual disposition, your comfort, your none of that. They're not even in tune with that to give a fuck about it. There's some kind people that work there, but that's not a part of their karmic contract as workers. They signed that shit away when they decided to work there. You think that in lower planes and denser planes that you get to keep your gifts and still do some shit like that? No. Sometimes you lose your gifts to do certain things until you break that contract. And then you got to deal with all the karma that came with that contract. Unless you jump into a contract that'll distract you from that contract, but that's a whole nother thing. So I went to this birth worker who did herbal abortions. She actually helped one of my clients to do an herbal abortion. So I knew she knew how to do it. And she was like, well, yes. She was like, well, how do you want to birth? And I didn't know what the fuck she was saying to me. And I was like, bitch, I'm talking about abortion. What do you mean, how do I want to birth? And she was like, you're still birthing. And that's when I was like, psh, holy shit. I can't escape birth. You're not escaping it. What, you think because the body's gone, that you're escaping the shit? No. Because the body's not going to have a physical life? No. She said, how do you, I asked her, I told her I wanted to do an herbal abortion. She said, how do you want to birth? And I was befuddled. I was like, she was like, yeah, even when you take the pill, those cramps that women take ibuprofen to numb themselves out of, those are your contractions, baby. Those are your contractions. Those aren't menstrual-like cramps that you're going to experience from the pill. Those are your contractions, honey. Yeah, you're in labor. The birth control, the abortion pill is an induction pill. You just got induced. Yeah. And you're about to labor. And you're going to push that baby out in the toilet and flush it down the toilet like most women do. So what the herbal woman did was she's trying to give me the opportunity to be present for the spirit with my intentions. And she even shared one of her stories. She said, listen, when I went to get a clinical abortion before I was doing this work, she said they used the vacuum to suck the baby out. And I thought everything was all good. And I was having complications and infections. Went back. The baby's body parts were scattered all across my womb. And she had to go back and commune with that spirit. She had to go back, obviously get it cleaned out and all that stuff. But when she communed with the spirit, she realized that that baby didn't want to leave her womb yet. So let's take this back to labor and birth. Let's take it back to labor and birth. When your labor stalled and you're pushing and pushing and pushing, but the baby won't come out because the baby's not ready to come out. Because the baby doesn't feel safe enough to come out. The same shit happens in abortion. And so the irresponsibility isn't in the fact that you're aborting. It's in the fact that you have no karmic spiritual regard for the spirit that is in your womb, what it was coming to gift you, what it was coming to teach you in life or in death. Doesn't matter. Whether the baby comes out with a breathing or not, the karmic lesson still remains. Even when women have stillbirths, the karmic lesson is going to be in the grief and everything that she went through the experience, and everything that she projected onto the pregnancy that was superficial, that actually meant nothing, because all she really fucking cared about was the health of her child, and she didn't even realize that while she was prancing around doing all these extravagant baby showers and shit. Right? So she said when she found out that the baby's body parts, right? She the baby wasn't ready to leave. So she had me doing exercises. And this is where the responsibility part came in. She was like, look, talk to the baby. Sing to her, ask her how she feels. What does she want? What do y'all want? What's going on here? And I literally was like, and I remember I laid down. I wanted to, and this is where I became like desperate. I was like, okay, maybe if I ask the baby to leave, I'll miscarry. I was still early on. This is what I was doing. And I was like, please exit my womb. Exit my womb. I want you to exit. I was saying it lovingly. I just kept saying, exit my womb, exit my womb. Because I was like, maybe if I naturally miscarry, then, the guilt won't be so guiltful. And then all the images came in. It was blood, body parts, gore. It was like I was taken to a literal hell realm. And I was like, whew, okay, can't do that. All right. Because he didn't want to leave. So that's when that voice came to me and was like, do you want to choose fear or you want to choose love? And so I thought about my fears. Having to deal with the father who's mentally ill and disconnected from himself at the moment. It could change, but at the moment he's not here right now. And I'm not the first person he's done this to. Having to deal with that for the rest of my waking life. Not having the support that I need unless I completely disregard myself at a spirit level. Dealing with any drama that comes with that. Having to do it alone with 2 kids, right? All this fear shit, all this indoctrinated residue, because that's what it was. Survival mode shit that I never ever dealt with, that I hustled my way through. And by hustling, I never dealt with it because I was hustling, right? So then I thought about the abortion, and I was like, okay, if you kill him, and then I broke down like my goddamn grandmother died all over again. And that was all the answer I needed. I didn't need no more answer than that. And I kept asking around. I was texting everybody in my phone. I was like, how was your abortion? How was your abortion? How was your abortion? All of them either numbed themselves so much that they didn't recall shit and they can't even actually connect enough to the experience to give me any insight, or it was flat out regret that they have not gotten over, or it was traumatically painful because the baby didn't want to leave and they didn't know that at the time. They thought it was just a procedure. Oh, the procedure is going to be painful, might be uncomfortable. No, the baby might not want to leave. Or you might be so numb that you think everything went great, but you just disconnected from yourself. So you don't feel anything. I can't listen to you. And that's another thing. Look at who you're asking for advice from. Assess the person instinctually. You can't ask a disconnected person that's disassociated what they think about abortion. They're going to be like, yeah, your body, your choice. And not saying all the your body, your choice people are disconnected. I'm just saying. They'll say some shit like that and you'll think it's all honky-dory. But you a full, living, breathing, conscious, all-feeling being. The shit that you're going to feel. And this is the interesting part. After this child's father literally told me to get rid of it, and I was on my way to the clinic trying to numb myself enough to go through with it, he called me. And this was his higher self, because the nigga showed up sometimes. He called me and he said, hey, you sure you want to do this? I said, you said get rid of it, so nigga, I'll get rid of it. It was in my ego and all that. I was numb, whatever. And he was like, well, I was like, I mean, I talked to a couple of my friends, and they said it was, 1, 2, 3, and just take ibuprofen and da-da-da-da. And he said something that I don't even think was just all him, because he wasn't in his ego. And he was like, look, you're different though. You're different than other people. You feel more. You see more. You're connected to more. That's not going to be your experience. And started boohoo crying. And I told him that I had numbed myself out because that was the only way I was going to go through with it. And, I was up reading abortion forums all night and reading all these women's stories. And not even, you read all these forms and these stories, but that doesn't give you any insight on the woman's karmic disposition or her spiritual disposition or her awareness level. You're just reading an experience. Bitch could be spiritually dead talking about, yeah, it was quick, it was easy. You can't take advice from her. So I started finding that everybody's advice that I sought out about abortion was obsolete. And I had to make the decision because I was going to have to live with the guilt, the regret, the pain, the sorrow, the whatever. Nobody else. And I would have been cursing the skies, asking myself why my experience wasn't as simple as the bitches in the forums. Right? So I decided to keep my baby. Had another dissonant experience. I thought of aborting further along. And that was even scarier because I was showing. And everything was crumbling and our relationship was deteriorating. And I felt like on higher planes that we connected on, our bond was so tight. But when he was working with his lower plane contracts, he was like a literal demon. Like just troubled and beyond what I could repair. I did a lot of energy work with him. I did a lot of stuff, but with working with people spiritually, they have to meet you halfway. And it was a lot of damage that I think he has to work through that with nature. I'm an expression of nature, but I'm still housed in a vessel, and I can only take but so much without mutual participation or reciprocal participation in the healing work. And then eventually, the energy work that I did, I was accused of doing witchcraft. So when that was happening, I knew that I was dealing with somebody that just had too many contracts with spookism and lower realm shit that just hadn't been worked through, period. That was it. It just hadn't been worked through. And I was made to be the villain. So that's why, you know, if somebody isn't ready for something, you can't just show up and think you're going to fix that problem for them, because you'll be the enemy at the end, because they're still an enemy to themselves. And when I noticed that, that's when I wiped my hands and I was like, you know what? I'm a step away. I said my little words, you know, I got a mouth on me, but I don't deserve that from him, from my relatives, from any of those people. And I'm not saying that from I'm a good person, I deserve better, but I'm saying, like, I dealt with my fears around breaking those contracts. I wanted more than anything to build with him and to revive community and to use his practical approach with my spiritual gifts and do all these amazing things, but I couldn't compromise my power for that. I also wanted to have a relationship with my relatives that was harmonious and fruitful, where we could coexist despite our differences. But you couldn't treat me any kind of way and talk to me any kind of way and violate me either. I'll fuck around and hit you. Yeah, I might. Not saying that's always the answer, but sometimes it is. Sometimes a motherfucker need to be knocked upside their motherfucking head. And that has more of a spiritual power behind it than a physical one. So, now, single mom in it, third dimensionally, right? I'm pregnant. His father is here and there doing what he can. This father is completely absent. I haven't heard from him in months. And I want it that way. Until he can get right in spirit, it's going to plague this process for me. I've been going through a lot of poverty ties from my bloodline, scarcity, starvation, homelessness, things that I knew was in my bloodline. But I let me give y'all an example. When I was at the height of my influencerhood, if y'all are new here, prior to this account, I had an account that had 20,000 followers. I was up there and I decided to delete it because I was just like, I can't do this shit anymore. Y'all niggas are weird. And so I made this account. So I'm still an influencer, obviously, in spirit, but not in numbers. But when I was at the height of my success and when I was rolling in dough, as some would put it, I used to overeat a lot. Binge eat, not emotionally per se, because I worked through that when I detoxed a lot. But I would overeat as if I was trying to make up for moments where I wouldn't have any food. And I remember thinking to myself, yo, this feels karmic. This feels like I've starved before. And I have a client that's a mentee of mine that was like, Nikhol, I feel like our relationship is actually reciprocal. Like, even though I'm her mentor, she's very in tune with herself. And when she's not in contact with me, she's doing the work and she's doing what she has to do. And she was like, I feel like you had a lifetime where you and your child starved. And when she said that, I was like, holy shit. That was one of the lifetimes that I kind of just skipped over a little bit. And so with this pregnancy, I've experienced a lot of hunger, a lot of not having food, a lot of being put out of places that I was staying. And it brought up all of the emotions, all of the pain, all of the fear around these bloodline themes, dealing with poverty and scarcity and lack and hunger, that I was just really trying to skip over, to be honest with y'all. And I had to relive it. The full emotional... Hey! Stop screaming! The full emotional and psychological and physical spectrum of it. And not try to find a way out, you know? That's been hard because, you know, I've had everything at least once. The money, the popularity, the validation, the clothes, the luxury home, lived in fucking paradise, fucking been acknowledged by celebrities that I admired. I've gone through all of those more glamorous, luxurious reality constructs. So to be back here is just like, damn, you really can't skip steps. You really can't just You know, you got to deal with it all now, or it will plague those more abundant timelines that you're trying to, you know, really enjoy. And that's why even when I was in the tropics, I had a lot of karma that I didn't pay off. So it jaded every project, every community revival effort, every relationship. It jaded, of course, coupled with the person's shit too. It jaded everything. And that's why I came back to the Pride Land to deal with my shit, you know? And I dealt with a lot of it in Costa Rica, but like the stuff that I couldn't deal with here, I dealt with in Costa Rica. The stuff that I couldn't deal with in Costa Rica, I dealt with here. So here I am. Now we're going to get into the essay, okay? And then I'm going to answer y'all questions, and then we're going to head out. So I said, or I started with saying, let me be formal with it. Roe versus Wade, how the clinical abortion ban is forcing women to deal with their bloodline karma directly. Not indirectly, not buying yourself time, directly. Okay? What you think is taking away your rights is actually taking away your privileges, so you can start making karmically sound decisions. So a lot of what we mistake for rights are privileges, spiritually and tangibly, okay? A lot of what we have as privileges are there to pacify us and compensate for the lack of birthrights, okay? So being financially stable, building credit and doing all that stuff, you might not have your abundance birthright at all. So you got to get your job, you got to have your forms, you got to do all that 3D corporate shit to solidify your livelihood. But pure raw abundance actually doesn't require that. And that's something that a lot of people, even myself, didn't want to accept. Like, what? I can do both. Nah, you should be able to literally sit there and just abundance. I'm just now getting to that point. I used to hustle and overwork and overextend myself just to make what I made. And it would be a lot that I made. Hard ass worker. That's not abundance. Abundance comes with ease. You should be able to be present and inhabit your body and be all the way just in tune and relaxed and still receive exactly what you need. And if you find that you're sitting there and you don't, then you probably been spending up a little bit of your credit. A lot of these privileges are karmic credits for what you can't spiritually afford. Yeah, tough pill to swallow. What you can't spiritually afford, these privileges that y'all think are rights, are pacifying. And that's why y'all are panicking, because when they take away your rights, you're going to be left with nothing but you and your spiritual wealth. And will let whatever it has or has not allotted you. When they start snatching houses up and snatching bank accounts up and all that shit, and you ain't dealt with the discrepancies, dealing with your abundance, dealing with protection, dealing with connection to source and all that stuff in the land, you're going to feel like a fish out of water. And yeah, you're going to be protesting for your privileges. And this is the thing between hybrid gene code expression and aboriginal gene code expression, which I've talked about in the past, but I plan on recycling all of that content and making essays about it. So rest assured, we'll be having that conversation. It's not a matter of forced birth, but forced spiritual accountability. Because here's the thing, like I said before, you can still give birth. Just give birth and stay present, stay in your body. So, and if not, are you telling me you want the choice to be disconnected? Is that what you're fighting for? Yes. Riddle me that. Are you fighting for the autonomy and the freedom to be disconnected from yourself and to not be responsible? Is that your right? Is it though? That doesn't make sense, actually. That's what you're fighting for. You can still give birth and not have a child and still deal with your karma and not have, if the burden is the physical baby like y'all make it seem like it is, you can still have an abortion and deal with that process. But y'all don't want to do that. Right? So it's not forced birth, it's forced spiritual accountability. If you understood the lost, sacred significance of labor and birth, you would understand that loss of such a privilege, not a right or illusion of choice, because that's what it is. You choosing not to have the physical baby, but the karmic lesson deepens and burrows itself deeper into your subtle bodies, and it's going to animate in a more fucked up way later. You just wait. You can cover it up with all those karmic contracts and buy yourself all these credits from this artificial system, but they pulling their shit away now, and I'm going to get into that in a second. And this is what I talk about in the fulfillment code in my slideshows. I have a plethora of slideshows that break down karmic contracts, karmic loans that we often take out, the whole fucking nine. I'm kind of sad that I'm discontinuing it, but I have to discontinue it because now is the time for us to get the fuck up off the internet and actually start physically showing up for each other, because when they start taking take-see-backsies, all these treaties ending and they packing their shit up, and the bankruptcy of the corporation becomes apparent, and we ain't left with nothing but our communities and our feet and our vaginas and the herbs that surround us, we gonna wish we'd have got off the internet sooner. So that's why I'm actually discontinuing my sacral spiritual services. And like I said, they'll still be offered for mothers and women for the moment within the Collective Womb Alliance, but for the general public, the matriarchal influence needs to be nurtured and cultivated. So that's sidebar, right? So we're going to start with this first quote, and I'm going to get into my first point. Everyone wants freedom of choice, but they deny themselves of the daily choice to be responsible. So like I said, essentially you want the freedom to do dumb shit, to be unconscious. You think it's your right to be karmically irresponsible, essentially. Because when we talk about the collective consciousness, guess what that means? We're all binded by a thread and energy. And if you have a womb, we also have a womb that binds us by a thread. That's why the Collective Womb Alliance has the name that it has. The collective womb. We have our singular womb karma that we've inherited from our bloodlines, and then we have the collective. Kevin Samuels was a manifestation of our collective womb karma. You feel me? Our experiences with our lovers and our family is a direct reflection of our individual bloodline karma. Right?
It is.
Yeah. Okay? So it's karmically irresponsible to want the freedom to not be responsible for your spiritual checks and balances that affects not only yourself but the collective. Y'all say everything is energy, right? Stick to that. Stand on that. If it's all energy, you have a responsibility. You do owe somebody something. You may not owe them an explanation and all that other 3D shit, all that other trivial shit, but you do owe your brother and your sister something if you are in fact binded by a energetic thread, if we are in fact a collective consciousness. One drop has a ripple effect and affects the entire ocean, remember. So you do have a responsibility. So if what you're saying is you want the right to not have that responsibility, you're probably going to be a part of the bunch that's purged off the fucking planet. Don't want to hear it, but somebody has to say it, and I'm always that person that says it. So there you go. And furthermore, when they start doing their takesies backsies, when your ass get purged off the planet because you don't want to manage your own checks and balances, ain't gonna be no hospitals, or the hospitals ain't gonna take you, or the hospitals are gonna be so dangerous that you ain't gonna want to step foot in there, and you ain't gonna have no choice but to get back to your community, right? So everybody wants the freedom of choice, but denies themselves daily of the choice to be responsible, self-aware, and respectful of their own minds, bodies, and spirits. Okay? This disregard disturbs our collective harmony, like I said, and if our modern day comforts, because that's what they are, privileges and comforts, y'all all talk about white people and racism and all this other shit, but you're holding true to their culture, right? We're talking about principle here. I'm not saying all people with white skin hold true to that culture. I'm just saying in principle, based off the arguments that y'all spin, right? Their culture is disconnection. Their culture is privilege. If they're hybrids and they're not connected to the land, they need the artificial system to survive. And you've adapted that. And you're fighting for it now. They asses want farms. How'd that happen? What, we did a switcheroo? You want the system now and they want the fucking farms? What's happening here? Okay? So, this disregard disturbs our collective harmony. And if our modern day comforts must be disturbed for that restoration of harmony to take place, so be it. Deal with it. Okay? It's not a matter of black women are dying. Some of them black women had to die so that some of their daughters can have a fucking fleeting chance spiritually. It ain't gonna feel good. You gonna miss her physical expression of consciousness. But energy doesn't die, right? Y'all all spiritual. Y'all all got altars. Y'all all got crystals. What the fuck y'all fighting for physical death for? Y'all rather physical life and deal with spiritual death? Because that's what's coming with severe karmic debt. That's what the fuck the Bible's talking about. The Bible ain't talking about shit but natural law versus man's law, which is all karmic. Okay? So, hybrid and aboriginal, real quick. This is a complex topic, so I try to make it as simple as possible. But, you have, okay, let's do the race thing real quick, because this is layers and layers of paradigms that have been created by people and karmic themes the same, okay? We have white people, we have black people. That's the never-ending war. White people run the world and black people are the victims. That's the narrative, right? Then we have the conscious black people. Here's a level up. We're saying the Caucasians are uncivilized, they're disconnected, and they need to die, and we need to pull away from them and get back to our own systems. And then we have black people. We're the kings and the gods of Egypt and Kemet, and we all knowing, and we created all this shit, and we taught them everything. That's that layer. And then you have the layer of actually being aware of genetics, epigenetics, which is where you're conscious of the fact that race is a construct, okay? Skin color does not stand, represent for, or speak for an individual's karmic or genetic disposition, period. And y'all said we got raped. Y'all said we had grandparents that was white slave owners, Caucasian slave owners. Y'all said that, oh, I believe in interracial couples and shit. We already did this already. So guess what? Now we have a random cesspool of genetic expressions. Which one is going to animate? Who knows? Find out on the next episode of fucking the Western world. Okay? So now you have girls with beautiful, deeply melanated skin. Probably still have all the attributes and all of the perks of melanin that a melanated person will have, given that her diet is actually good. But she expresses hybrid gene code. And y'all call it white, y'all call it white supremacy, internalized racism. That's a hybrid gene code. And by hybrid, I mean unnatural, disconnected, which is no longer solely contingent on skin color. Might have been at some point, but we already crossed and mixed and contaminated the pool of shit. So now we have to actually have our instincts intact and go beyond what meets the eye. So, this is for the young lady that asked the question. The perspective, when I say aboriginal versus hybrid, that's my way of hinting at the gene code expressions that an individual animates in a moment, so that you can actually know what the fuck and who the fuck you're dealing with. You might have a beautiful melanated goddess with her head wrapped, and she might have the Ankh symbol on her arm and all this shit. Straight up hybrid gene code animated. You might have a completely Caucasian woman. That bitch knows herbs, the land, and can communicate with the animals better than every fucking African American that you done met. Follow the gene code expression. I know it's hard, and I know if you're still currently paying off karma, dealing with the white and black and racism thing, it's going to be hard for you to break out of that paradigm, for you to understand that concept, and nobody's forcing you to. Nobody's forcing you to. Don't disrupt your process to understand the concept that I'm spitting, period. But I'm just saying, some of us don't deal with racism. Some of us don't have white people as an enemy. Some people don't even animate or manifest shit like that. But you do. Yes, there can be a switch. And this goes into environment, and then I'm going to get back to the essay. because, yeah. So environment. Remember the Willie Lynch letter, which was the slave letter that on how to make a slave, and pretty much taking the black savage Negro and using the same method of breaking a horse to pretty much tame the wild Negro, the black person, the Aboriginal, right? So there was a quote that he had, and this is in my sleep deprivation workbook. Is it? Yeah. Where he says, in order, you know, this method is going to work for some time, and your slaves should be in shape, and they should be, you know, good to go, and you should have a booming business. However, there is a natural phenomena that occurs every so often. This is what the nigga said. There's a natural phenomena that occurs every so often where the subconscious touches some type of historical basis, and this pretty much the savage Negro comes back. Whatever was stuffed away or programmed over comes back to surface. And in the event that this happens to your savage Negro, you have to have a multiplicity of illusions spinning around in orbit so that he doesn't know what the fuck is actually going on, and you can put him back under. This also goes into Get Out, the movie, in the sunken place, okay? This also goes into the same ideology. I use this analogy all the time, where you got the circus lion that was trained all his life since he was a cub, right? And he's been performing, he's tamed, he sits when you say sit, he doesn't attack, and then he goes outside, and there's something subconsciously that clicks for him subconsciously in his environment. It could be a smell, it can be the way a gust of wind blows against his mane, it could be literally anything, environmental or elemental. And then the lion that was perfectly trained for 20 years mauls his owner and kills him. So then the hybrids, he was a good lion and he betrayed his owner. Nah, that lion tapped into his aboriginal natural gene code expression, his ancestral expression, right? And that was his great-great-great-great-grandparents that have been in the safari for the last millennia. That's still in his genetics. You can't erase a motherfucker's genetics. You can corrupt it. You can put it on pending. You can stuff it away. You can make it somewhat dormant. But there is a natural phenomena that always takes place in humans and animals the same, where that genetic expression that was overridden by programs and dogma, the natural algorithm comes back to surface eventually. And then you have the multiplicity of illusions. Oh, I need a job. Oh, people are going to think I'm crazy. Oh, people don't hear voices. That's not normal. Oh. And then you go and you get put right back under. Here, take this pill. Here, go get saved. Here, go do this. Here, go do that. Illusion. And you get put right the fuck back under. It doesn't go away. Might come back next week. But y'all get the point. Okay? So, my first bullet point. Many may not recognize it due to how pacified they are by the government at varying polarities. So when I say varying polarities, I mean you could be pacified by the government as far as Section 8 and food stamps and government support is concerned, but you could also be pacified by the government as far as credit, getting your black card, home ownership, which you don't actually own, and all that other corporate shit. Both sides of the spectrum are pacified by the government. It's just that one reflects wealth and one reflects poverty. But, you know, neither one of y'all have y'all birthrights. So, you know. And actually the ones that, well, no, when you two relying, you kind of sign that contract spiritually and you raffle that away. But I was going to say those that know the struggle, they actually have more of a chance at getting their birthrights back than the ones that don't. But then again, the ones that don't, they still have their awakenings and they might choose to throw all that shit away and do something of true meaning. Whatever. It can animate in any fucking way. So, many may not recognize it due to how pacified they are by the government at varying polarities, but the corporation we've mistaken for a nation, because this is a business, y'all know that. It doesn't matter what level you know it on. If you're a Moor, if you're American national, if you're a sovereign, if you're a diplomat, whatever, you know that this is a business. The United States of America Incorporated, right? Minister Lalisha Aris, she's going to be helping with a lot of that stuff for anybody who's interested. She's a part of my intuitive marketing team. Whoop whoop. She's also going to be added to the Collective Womb Alliance so that y'all can start traveling lawfully and doing y'all paperwork if y'all so choose that's what y'all want to do. I'll get into that on another live. Now, but the corporation that we've mistaken for a nation is now out of business and has been for quite some time now. The U.S. went bankrupt, back in the 30s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And that's when the dollar switch went from being backed by silver to debt notes, that kind of thing, right? Yep, they're packing it up, and that process most certainly will not be televised. And what will be televised are things that trigger your attachment to these privileges. That's going to be televised. There's a food shortage. No more synthetic artificial formula that's making your baby sick. No more, what else? No more abortions. Yeah, they're packing it up and they're giving shit back to the sovereign. You just don't have the spiritual eye activated to recognize it because you've been booby drunk off of synthetic privileges, right? So, they have to give everything back to the aboriginals of the land and those that are sovereign in spirit who have been doing that inner work, who don't have to lift a finger and will have abundance. A lot of us are still going through that crossover process, myself included. I'm not exempt. I just have a knack for articulating it. So there that is. Which will require us to become responsible for things that we've been bred to rely on the system for. Food, okay? Breast milk, lactation tips, fixing our diets, getting rid of processed foods because your body can't give your baby milk because it's something that you're not doing, whether you want to accept that or not. And guess what? That's karmic too. That's karmic too. And you have to make sacrifices. If y'all in the fulfillment code, this is what? Step 2 of karmic clearing. You have to make your sacrifice before you can get a certain birthright back. And after that sacrifice usually follows shadow work. But I'll show y'all that formula at another time too. So, in times to come, you will find that those who are not willing to reclaim their spiritual birthrights will be more driven to fight for the perks and privileges that come with the culture of artificial disconnected living. That's what we all grew up on. Let's keep it a bean. Let's not just talk about it sometimes, but then not want to talk about it. And just because you have fiat doesn't mean that you have broken away from that culture. That means that you're on the other side of the polarity, like I said. So, instead of organic connected living, right? They will fight to sustain the ignorance around the intimate thread between life and death. Okay? Now, I want to say something about breastfeeding, okay? Which we also have a category for in the Collective Womb Alliance. We'll be helping y'all out with that. But remember, when you're paying off karma, right? The longing has to be organic. Most of you guys, some of you guys, cannot spiritually afford the insights and the tips that are third dimensionally available to you in writing, articles, books, and stuff, which is why it doesn't work, right? That's not, without that article and without that book, you wouldn't have been able to afford that insight. Your baby might have straight up died from starvation if you keep it all the way natural. But we don't believe in natural no more, right? And so this is that thin line between, for instance, awakening. Let's use spiritual awakening. Follow me in principle here, right? There are people that spiritually awaken because literally they're hearing voices, they're fucking having dreams, they're astral projecting, and they want to make sense of that shit and cultivate it and help others. That's an organic spiritual awakening. You have other people that see how they think spiritual awakenings look, right? How they think certain things look and they like how it looks, and they have this illusion, this idea of what it might be like, and they pursue spiritual awakening that way. What this person that had the organic awakening is going to attract and learn and receive and comprehend is not going to be the same as what this person that just went for the idea and the facade of it is going to comprehend. This person likely suffered enough and went through enough karmic clearing to do the work to afford themselves a certain caliber of healing, insights, methodologies, detoxification, all of that stuff, where they didn't have to try It just happened. And then you have these people that are studying, reading all these books, getting all these specialists, hiring all these people, and nothing's fucking working. Why is that? You can't spiritually afford it. But the corporate world, the artificial world, has convinced you that all you got to do is read a book. All you got to do is hire a specialist. All you got to do is do step 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're good to go. No. There is an integrative thread that comes with the actual karmic work, that comes with a lot of these solutions and healing and all that shit. There are people that have taken herbs and detoxes and healed themselves completely because they were organically called to do that. And there are people that have taken those same herbs, gone to those same places, and nothing worked. Why do y'all think that is? 1 second. Oh yeah, capitalization. You only have 2 more, so you're not going to have any touch. They're almost gone.
Almost gone?
Yeah.
Almost gone?
Yeah. You see, you have 1 more. Don't make a mess, please.
Make a mess?
Don't make a mess, I said. Right? So and then you have this artificial capitalistic viewpoint toward healing and getting what you want, because you can't just be like the hybrid or the artificial person and buy your way into what the fuck you want, which is a privilege, right? Which is a privilege. And now you want to sue. Now you think everybody's a scammer. Now you think, oh, yeah, I just got robbed out of my money. No, your fiat is just fiat, okay? Everybody don't got spiritual wealth to couple with that fiat. A lot of y'all are broke as fuck spiritually, but y'all got a lot of fiat. There's some people that are wealthy as fuck spiritually and have a lot of fiat. There are people that are wealthy as fuck spiritually and have no fiat. There are people that are, you get what I'm saying? I'm just doing a different combination of different things. So nothing's black and white is what I'm getting at, right? They will fight to sustain the ignorance around the intimate thread between life and death. Because that's what it is ignorance. A lot of the arguments that I've seen in passing is about black women are dying and babies are dying and this is dying. And why y'all so scared of death? Weren't y'all just talking about spirituality and energy and all this other shit? Which is why platforms like Instagram don't need to be revered as sources of spiritual insight through and through. A lot of y'all haven't graduated to certain levels in consciousness to be discussing topics that y'all choose to discuss on this platform. And so y'all are unconsciously misleading people, right? Like I said, if y'all believe in energy not being destroyable but transferable, women aren't dying. Babies aren't dying. Karmic checks and balances are just doing this. Life force energy is being released to balance out whatever discrepancies within that woman's bloodline. And if you really want to do your due diligence in figuring out why that woman died, why that baby died, look at her bloodline spiritually. If you don't have the capacity or the instinct to do that, you're not supposed to be a part of this conversation, at least not yet. But if you do have the instincts and the premonitions and the tools to gauge the spiritual and karmic implications of an individual upon looking at them or upon having a conversation with them or whatever your methodology and channel is, you will see right off the bat why the woman died. You will see right off the bat why the baby died. If any of you guys call yourselves readers and doing energy work and all that stuff, lay them motherfucking cards out. Read some cards. I do eye readings. I've done eye readings on people that were so karmically indebted. I'm going to give y'all an example. I did an eye reading on a couple. This was my last couple's eye reading because it just frightened me. I didn't know I was that good at what I did. The girl's boyfriend. It was a couple's eye reading, so I do the man and I do the woman. I just started offering this service again, and I'm taking it away July 1st. Low-key happy nobody booked, but I kind of been wanting to exercise that at the same time. So it's pretty much to gauge the karmic compatibility of two individuals, right? And her boyfriend was so karmically indebted And so in the reading, I was pretty much expressing that. And it was getting to the point where it's like going to severe spiritual bankruptcy, to where a large life force sacrifice would have to be made. And he ended up dying shortly after the eye reading. And when she told me, she was just telling me how the reading said everything and warned him, and he wasn't making those changes. And it's because he couldn't afford to make those changes. That's what severe spiritual bankruptcy looks like. Sometimes they got to get up out of here. That's probably the best thing that can happen for their soul, is for them to lose physical life and start over on another timeline where they have a fleeting chance. Right? So this whole life-death thing, if you revel yourself as understanding shamanic work, or if you actually have remained present in birth and labor, you know ain't nobody dying. And you know that most of these people ain't living. So there's that. So reassess what you're fighting for. If it's on a purely physical plane, like I said, this conversation isn't for you. Fight for what's going on amongst. Last one is all gone.
All gone.
Right? So they will fight to sustain the ignorance around the intimate thread between life and death, as well as the all-around karmic incompetence that has made the great America, that we all know and hate, a cesspool of spiritually dead persons, which fuels corporations with the life force that they need to persevere. This is where documentaries like The Matrix come in, how all those people were plugged in and they're pretty much dead until they wake up and they choose whatever illusion of choice, the pill or whatever the fucking concept was in The Matrix, right? So that's that. I keep forgetting to pin my Cash App because I'm giving y'all a lot of my time, and I don't mind accepting donations by a long shot. So give me a second to do that. Now, next point. Clinical abortions, right, are harsh, sterile, and perceivably the easy way out. And I said perceivably because it's not the easy way out. It just gives you the illusion that you're making a choice to not experience something that you're still very much going to experience unless you further spiritually obliterate yourself, right? By numbing yourself to assuming responsibility for the spiritually inherited self-hatred, paralyzing fear, grief, poverty mindset, and or many other karmic themes that you would have otherwise been required to experience the full emotional, psychological spectrum of, and make sacrifices for via labor and birth for your soul and bloodline, or so that your soul and bloodline could be relieved. I lost my line. Could be relieved of the stains of those karmic residues. Many will bring up situations like rape and use that to justify the necessity of clinical abortion. But even horrifying experiences like that will present necessary sacrifices that will need to be made to restore harmony within that individual's bloodline and or grant the woman in question a higher degree of consciousness, right? Which is basically higher spiritual rank. Even if through much pain, violation, and suffering. So, like I said, if you guys have been a part of the Fulfillment Code, if you recall the formula that I go through when I go through your clearing of your subtle bodies and karmic clearing and all that stuff. Nobody likes this. I don't know why. Maybe y'all watch too much TV. But karmic clearing is often painful. Karmic clearing often entails suffering, violation, heinous, fucked up shit, massacres, killings, abuse at varying degrees as per your unique karmic disposition. It's not the same for everybody. And if you feel like you have to fight for somebody that has animated this whatever, you likely have something in your bloodline that resonated with that experience and you want to vindicate that expression, like I was saying earlier, right? So, like I said, taking it back to the beginning, if you just got here, If it was up to us, let's assess the human condition right now. If it was up to our willpower, again, if it was up to what we preferred, wouldn't shit get done? We're fighting, not we, I'm not a part of this. Some of y'all are fighting for the freedom to be disconnected from yourself. Okay? That's what you're doing with your willpower. So why, if learning how to love yourself, or if learning how to fight for yourself, or if learning how to honor your body, unique to your bloodline karma, meant rape, or meant molestation, or meant incest, and then you have to make a choice in those experiences, right? The woman can fight back and slit that nigga's neck. She just vindicated a large chunk of her bloodline because she fought back. Whereas all of her 9 of her great-great-grandmothers sat back and let a person rape them, or let a slave master rape them. She was the one that got raped and jumped up and cut his fucking balls off, right? So she vindicated her bloodline through that experience. Or she might lay there and not vindicate it. Then her daughter got to go through it. Maybe not in the same way, because her daughter is going to have the unique bloodline karma of that father and this mother. So it might animate a little bit differently. Y'all following? So all that privilege shit, y'all always talking about Caucasians and whites and privileges. All of y'all motherfuckers is privileged. Straight up. Straight up. Y'all want to choose what y'all karma animates as. But given the circumstance now, we're not doing a good fucking job. And if it was left to us, this planet would have been obliterated a long time ago. A long fucking time ago. Okay? So again, if this is not a conversation that you're ready for, if you don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about, log out and find someone who's outraged, and you might resonate with that more. But you have to have been doing a certain level of spiritual work and karmic clearing to comprehend what I'm saying. I'm not saying it to shame anybody or to make anybody feel bad or to justify things that have happened. I'm making you aware of the spiritual and karmic implications of why those things might happen, or prompting you to deal with that in a new way. Oh, Lord have mercy. 1 second, guys. Come here. Yeah. Yeah. So, now, the pain experienced, right? Going back to rape or incest or any of these heinous experiences that nobody deserves, obviously, because a lot of us are kind-hearted and we're giving and we're loving, and on a purely third dimensional level, we actually don't deserve that. But we're in the earth realm, okay? Let's keep it a beam. Most of what we attract is not purely contingent on our waking life character, personality, kind-heartedness, none of that. That's why y'all have circumstances where y'all see, oh, she's so kind. Why would anybody do that to her? She didn't deserve that. Go down her bloodline. Somebody was disempowered and she had to live through that. And hopefully, with karmic competence, she starts to have the tools or the awareness to work through that in a way that isn't about blaming the third dimensional manifestation or victimizing herself and keeping the cycle perpetual, right? So, the pain experienced in these experiences is her picking up the slack of those before her, and instead of disconnecting, this is key right here. This applies to abortion, this applies to rape, this applies to incest, this applies to any painful experience that y'all are fighting for protection or rights or whatever from, right? Instead of disconnecting, because a lot of us disassociate and disconnect, right? Instead of disconnecting, which puts the karmic theme back on pending and back in orbit to be manifested in another way for you to deal with, right? Instead of disconnecting, you remain present enough to relive
on a purely physical, purely emotional, purely psychological, or all three. It depends on how serious it is, right? To relive and release the full emotional, psychological, and physical spectrum of the karma she has inherited, okay? And if she chooses spiritual death, pay attention to this too, for all of y'all that are about whatever y'all about. If she chooses spiritual death for perceived 3D freedom or success, right? Because a lot of y'all just like, I want my body back, I want my freedom, now's not the time, da 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 da. If she chooses spiritual death, and a lot of y'all take spiritual death, I don't know what y'all take it as, but a lot of y'all, what?
What's the other?
You broke it.
What's the head after?
Here. Right? Spiritual death is just disconnection from your Trinity. Okay? There are moments where I get so wrapped up in 3D and work that I become spiritually dead. And then when I do Kundalini yoga, I'm slapped back into spiritual life. Spiritual death is not that hard of a thing. That's where the story in the Bible about Elijah, the prophet, and the woman, and she brought her dead son to him, and then he laid himself over him, and then he woke up and he sneezed 7 times. That happens to me in Kundalini yoga all the time. Getting disconnected spiritually and dying spiritually happens quite often, actually, especially given our culture and our lifestyle. It's pretty normalized, to be real. So we have to be super diligent at the integrative practices and the lifestyles and the environments that we consent to, because it can exasperate that spiritual death or make it so bad that we don't even have any consciousness that it's happening, right? So if she chooses spiritual death for perceived 3D freedom or success, if she ever chooses to procreate at any point, her offspring will be left with the responsibility to pick up that slack, plus whatever karma that she has continued to accumulate within that state of disconnectedness, right? So that is, I'll post somewhere about the story with Elijah and Elisha, because I used it in my mystery school before I discontinued it. But this is why I said you think you're making your body your choice, but that's just your body. Are you just the body? That's what a corpse is. A corpse is just the body. My body, my choice. What about your mind and your spirit? Pay attention to language and verbiage. People are telling you their spiritual dispositions through their language. Nobody's saying my spirit, my choice. Nobody's saying my mind, my choice, because guess what that would mean? That would mean that you now got to be responsible for what the fuck got you into the situation in the first fucking place, because it starts on the mental and spiritual plane, and then the physical last. So when you hear a motherfucker saying, my body, my choice, think corpse. And obviously, not that black and white, but I'm just saying, where's the regard for the spirit and the mind? It's a trinity. This is your pyramid. This is your connection to God we're talking about. These 3 things being connected is your connection to source. So if you're going to cut 2 of them out and fragment your trinity, it's going to be really easy for you to choose another God. And by another God, I mean the system. Global Black Girl, you're very late. I said that earlier. I said the only way to clear karma is not through lived out, animated, manifested experiences. You can do so through breath, through body work, through being deep enough in nature to have elemental support, etc. So you just arrived a little late. You didn't hear that part. But no, you don't have to animate it in 3D. But if you're in an unnatural environment, 9 times out of 10, you kind of experience it in a more traumatic way than you would have in nature. And I'm not saying that you don't go through painful karmic experiences in nature, but it's a little bit more artificial here. And not only that, if your breath isn't corrected, and if you're not working with a medicine or something that gives you more prana to afford yourself that experience, then yeah, you can learn without. Yeah, you can, but that's not everybody's circumstances at the moment at all, actually. That's probably a very small percentage. Those of us that are working with raw prana and raw breath, that's the work that I'm teaching. Most people are not fucking with that. Most people are still stuck on what's happening in 3D. So this live is my way of meeting them there and hopefully ushering them into what you're talking about. But I've learned through experience that I can't just jump to prana. I can't just jump to the etheric stuff. I can't just jump to the unseen, because when people are still rooted in 3D, they need to see something with their eyes and with their ears and with their 5 senses first. And then when they have trust established on those denser realms, then they can open up those other channels to trust that of the unseen and that of the intangible and stuff. So I'm not touching on that specifically because it's a form of integrating the message that I'm adapting. So from experience though, I remember just trying to jump into the deep topics, and then people are like, but what about, and they'll say some 3D shit, and gotta meet them where they at. If I was doing this for what I wanted to talk about, I wouldn't even have a reason to be on here. This is not about me only anymore. So being that everybody isn't actually strong enough to deal with just prana or afford themselves the prana that would allow them to deal with karmic clearing without suffering, we have to meet them where they're animating it and help them to make sense and make peace of how they're manifesting it into their lives, and it deals with a variety of different factors too. Sometimes, like for instance, if your bloodline karma is that brolic, I can sit here and teach you Kundalini yoga. I can teach you about prana. But if you haven't gone through enough of certain experiences to allot yourself that openness, because you have to make a lot of sacrifice to even make space to receive any of this, caliber of information that I'm talking about. Sometimes you have to do a certain level of work to get to a certain point, and then you can receive that information, because now you can actually halfway afford the shit. But that goes back into what I said a little bit earlier. So I don't want to revisit what I already touched on. I just wanted to tell you that because I didn't want you thinking that I was insinuating that the only way to clear karma is to get raped and go through incest and to be killed and shit like that. But that's what everybody's preaching about right now. Nobody's talking about ayahuasca and all that stuff right now. Everybody's talking about this shit. So this is what we're talking about. So, pick up this slide. So, next point. If you desire to release the life within your womb, but consider yourself a woman of spiritual caliber, you're going to have to step your shit up. So this is where the distinction happens. You got women and you got women of spiritual caliber. This is not saying that these women have no spiritual insight, strength, or whatever, but a woman of spiritual caliber is simply a matter of conscious held responsibility, right? And integrity, okay? So, an indoctrinated corporate woman, right? So remember, it's not this black and white, but I'm going with the two extremes that I often see. An indoctrinated corporate woman, this is a woman that's plugged into the system, believes in it with her whole heart, votes every run, believes that every president is going to fix her problems and whatever. Doesn't, indoctrination, go look it up, right? An indoctrinated corporate woman is concerned with her physical preservation, because my body, my choice is about your vessel, not really regarding the mind and the spirit very much, okay? Her physical preservation, her survival needs, her image, and her perceived freedom, right? So she's not really concerned with the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, the Holy Breath, all of these things that actually make you a living, breathing person. Living isn't just physicality, being able to walk around and say, hi, I'm Tom. You can be spiritually dead and walk in and go to work every fucking day. You're a corpse. That will make you more corporate, right? Now, that's more of what the corporate indoctrinated women seem to lean toward. A woman of spiritual caliber, on the other hand, and there are women all in between this. So like I said, it's not black and white. You can have a little mixture. Some of y'all are still in the process of unplugging from the system and might still have some of those traits and features. I might still have some of them traits and features. And some of y'all might be more on the other deep end and have unplugged significantly from that, but more on the other side. So there's women all in between. I'm just describing the two polarities. So don't take this as, so am I the indoctrinated woman or the woman of spiritual caliber? You can be somewhere in between depending on where you are in your journey. And that's for you to decide, not me. Okay. So don't put that responsibility on me, because I'm not going to take it. Right. A woman of spiritual caliber, on the other hand, is concerned with the spiritual cleanliness of her bloodline, paying off inherited karmic debt that has been stored in her cells and her womb, right? and is willing to tread that line of life and death as seen in labor and birth to retrieve, yeah, because you got to go to the underworld to get your birthrights back sometimes, to retrieve what has been spiritually given away and or stolen. Yes. I don't know. So that eternal life may be granted to her. And this is what people rever as access to the kingdom, or the new earth, or having access to your gifts or spiritual insights, or ascension. These are all the same phenomena, just use different words for different sects and belief systems and whatever, right? It has many names, which leads me to my next point. Now, there was something that I want to touch on. So, when I said a woman of spiritual caliber is concerned with the spiritual cleanliness of her bloodline and paying off inherited debt that has been stored in her cells and in her womb, this takes me to diet. If you're a part of the Fulfillment Code, you have access to my Psycho Spiritual Resource Hub. Watch my video on when I broke my vegan diet, okay? Intuitive eating is more spiritually sovereign, okay? Food does more to your cells and your karmic disposition and your ability to release it in a given moment than you might imagine. It's not just always about detox and nutrition. That's the third dimensional significance of food. But there is a karmic significance of food too. You might be called to eat a certain food that's typically unhealthy, but it'll put you back in a vibration to deal with a certain karmic theme that you were tuning your light body to experience so that you can release it and process it and release it. It'll bring up thoughts and emotions and sensations that in your light body, in your detox body, you can't really embody because you're too light. So you got to go eat some meat, or you got to go eat an egg, or you might even go eat some fucked up candy from your childhood, and it puts you back in your inner child so you can do your inner child work. That's why intuitive eating is important. Not for just health and detox. Some people detox, and they still sick. Sick in the head and sick in the heart because they're missing the energy work. Some people are healthy diets. They're eating this, they're eating that. They're vegan, they're plant-based, they're alkaline, they're this, they're that. Still sick in the head and sick in the heart. So know that intuitive eating is an integrative practice that I encourage. Not because, oh, don't be alkaline, don't be vegan. Do whatever the fuck you want to do. But whenever it gets to a point where you're enslaved to a system, you are colonizing yourself to a diet. That's colonization. You have to decolonize the body. You have to experiment with your body, because guess what? Some of us have been eating for survival, and then when we got older, we kept eating the shit that we ate for survival. It made us sick. We got disease. And then some of us got disease. We got scared shitless, and we organically went to cleanse, and we saved our own fucking lives. And then we went vegan, and we was vegan for so long that we fucked around and detoxed a little bit too long. We became malnourished and weak, and our brains started degenerating because we didn't have those fucking healthy fats that we needed. Some of us didn't have enough prana. It could have been a combination of all that shit. Yes, pregnancy cravings tie into this, but it's more bloodline related, right? Sometimes you got to eat a certain food or be in a certain, some of it is nutritional, but that's the 3D plane. I'm talking about karma. A lot of the stuff that I craved with this pregnancy was from the father's bloodline. And certain things require me to be in a certain vibration to pay off, especially if I'm not paying it off in tandem with him present. So there is a karmic implication behind diet. And when you detox, like I said, if you forever once think that you're going to approach that from a purely physical standpoint, you're sadly mistaken, and you might make yourself really, really fucking sick before you realize that you need to just listen to yourself and listen to what you need and honor the level that you're at, the level in consciousness, the degree in consciousness that you're at, and say fuck off to anybody that does anything otherwise for you. Because guess what? Autonomy over your journey and over your body and over your diet comes first. They say the gut is the first brain, right? Who's running your brain? Dr. Sadie? The vegan community? And all their fucking delusion and cultism? Who's running your brain? Take your fucking mind back and do what the fuck you feel like you need to do. That might mean go back and eat something fucked up, get sick and be like, all right, okay, boom. I've been vegan. That didn't work for me. I went back to the shit I was eating before I was vegan. That's dirty. Where can I find a happy medium? Oh, sustainably sourced foods. Eating the shit in moderation. Eating it only when my body feels called to. When I eat something and it makes me sick, maybe I need to cut it out. That's my karma manifesting a sickness or a karmic interference so that I can take heed to it and listen and make a change. Some people don't even have that kind of regard for their body. They'll sit there, get sick off some chicken from a place, heal from the sickness, and go back and eat the same goddamn chicken the next day or as soon as they're better. Totally missed the karmic implication of why that manifested. So that's what this conversation is actually about. Vegan was never healthy. If anything, plant-based was healthy to kind of get your cells purged and to, get your body back in a position to function optimally. And then you go back and you replenish it. Nobody's replenishing anything. And they're getting fucking sick and they're losing their fucking minds. That's what's happening. So, not going to go into that either. So, my next point. This is going back into the full spectrum birth worker that I was talking about. I spoke to a full spectrum birth worker that assists with life, carrying to full term and death, which is not carrying to full term, but choosing to self-induce and be fully present for delivery in physical death of the fetus, meaning not disconnecting from the experience and all karmic implications that come up, right? And so, she said that in situations where women have tried to clinically abort and there are complications, lots of pain, or the baby's body parts end up scattered across the womb, that means the baby did not want to be removed or did not feel safe enough to exit the womb. So we as life bearers are naturally shamans, whether we want to accept that or not. We obviously don't accept it on a mass or a larger scale or a more marketed scale, because I'm not going to say that the social media world accounts for the collective, because it doesn't. Right? When life inhabits our womb, we sitting there, we taking dick, we fucking, we doing all this stuff that we want to do. We exercising our choice and our body rights then. But then when a larger responsibility comes into play, where you got to get other people involved now, it's not just about you. Even if you do terminate the life, you got the father, you got his whole bloodline, right? You got the doctor that you're going to go to do the procedure and make your blood sacrifice for you, because you don't want to make your blood sacrifice yourself no more, right? You got your family that are going to have to support you psychologically and spiritually through the process. You're not just going through this with yourself anymore. That's what people don't realize. You got a lot of people involved. So naturally, you have to be held responsible for your actions, right? And when that baby inhabits your womb and it don't want to leave, you need to deal with that. You need to communicate with that spirit. I don't know how to communicate with that spirit. That's how you got yourself in this fucking situation probably. You're disconnected. I was disconnected. Why the fuck can't I communicate with something I created with my vagina? Why can't I communicate with something that's wiggling around in my body? Where are my instinctual, intuitive, telekinetic abilities? Where they at? We all spiritual, but when it's time to get abortion, we can't communicate with the being that we literally had all of our nutrition and all that shit robbed of to sustain and to build and to nurture. We can't communicate with it. I remember when Sharu was not head first, and she said, you need to communicate with your baby. I was like, what? The fuck you want me to tell him to turn around? Yeah, tell your baby to turn around. Far-fetched concept, right? That's what happens when you come from an indoctrinated world. So in situations like this, as far as karmic competence and spiritual accountability is concerned on the woman's behalf, it was the woman's responsibility not to deny herself of the right to choose how she wants to birth. So nobody's saying you can't kill your baby. Nobody's saying that at all, actually. Nobody's saying that. What we're saying is, be responsible enough to learn how to communicate with the life and the spirit inhabiting your womb, the lessons that he or she came to teach, be it through them living a life or be it through them dying physically, right? And having the capacity to stomach these experiences accordingly to transcend the karmic debt in your own womb, right? And inevitably so your bloodline. sacrifice cannot be avoided through either route, FYI. So when I say illusion of choice, this is what I'm talking about. Let me turn the light on. It's getting a little dark. So when I say illusion of choice, this is what I'm speaking about. Sacrifice cannot be avoided with either route. So you're essentially buying yourself time and convenience by going through the numbing procedure, which is clinical abortion, instead of choosing to bring birth to birth consciously, regardless of if physical death is the end result. So nobody's saying, again, you don't have the right to do what you want to do with the baby that you're growing. We're just saying become spiritually responsible. That's it. Because you're not just affecting yourself, you're affecting a collective, actually. If you're saying you're connected and stuff. And this is why when bad things happen to you, you feel alone, is because you're disconnected from that collective that you have no regard for when you make certain decisions and when you do certain things that are karmically binding. Okay? The truth is, you're not ridding yourself of the responsibility of that soul and all associated karmic lessons. You're putting them on pending to manifest in other ways in your life, and or disconnecting yourself from embodying the higher expression of your own consciousness that your vessel felt it had to replicate via procreation to achieve. So like I said earlier in the live, when people, we get these downloads and we get impregnated by people's, like by men when they ejaculate in us. We can get impregnated by the code in their sperm without growing an actual baby, right? But sometimes if we don't have the spiritual capacity, or if we're not honoring ourselves enough to take that code and alchemize it and embody it, we replicate ourselves and we embody it through the lessons that the child teaches. We can do either or, right? Make sure y'all putting y'all questions in the box because the thread goes by too fast. So the next point, we always have a choice. So the illusion that the governmental forces are denying us a choice is essentially deflective, okay? What they are actually doing, and this goes back to karmic checks and balances, they've been giving us this expendable credit to buy ourselves time and convenience from paying off our karma, right? But they're pulling that away. And we're going to have to deal with our karma head on. And it's not just women, it's everybody. We're just talking about women in this situation, right? What they're actually doing is putting spiritual responsibility back into the hands of the living sovereign, the natural people that remain diligent in sustaining their connection to source instead of man. So again, another split that's taking place. Natural law, man's law. Everybody's a little bit in between in some regards, right? But this is what's balancing itself out. We are about to be required, pay attention to this part. We are about to be required to manage our own spiritual checks and balances without a crutch. Yes. Right? Crutches, hospitals, clinical abortions, therapists. All these things that don't get to the origin, the spiritual origin of the karmic manifestation, but deal with the symptomatic approach, the symptomatic healing, the surface expression, which doesn't solve the problem, we all know, right? So, as a woman, you'd only panic over clinical abortion being illegal out of ignorance to your spiritual responsibilities as a life and death keeper, because that's what you are. You bleed every month. You make blood sacrifices every month, right? And there's karmic implications to women who stop getting their periods as well. Yeah.
I'm a bug, eh?
Yeah, and this is another part that y'all are not going to want to hear. Many women will have to lose their physical lives. Men too, babies too. It's not just people, but we're talking about women here. Many women will have to lose their physical lives so that the imbalances between responsible life bearers and irresponsible life bearers can be brought back into harmony. Some women will have to die on that hospital bed. Some women will have to die in that car accident. Some women might die in birth. Some babies might die in birth. Some babies might die at 2 years old, randomly. And it's up to you to become spiritually and karmically competent enough to gauge why that happened. And you can't look at the 3D for that. You can't look to a therapist for that. You can't look to a doctor for that, because guess what? They're dealing with the corpse, which is just the body without the integration and the embodiment of the mind or the spirit. They can't give you insight on that. You're going to have to get back to your shamans and your shadow workers and your seers and your mediums. All the people that y'all accuse of voodoo every fucking day. Yes, some things can be paid in breath, but some things have to be paid in blood. Blood is life force, but so is breath. That's what prana is, pure life force. Sometimes when we go through a lot of psychological pain, that releases a certain level of life force. Sometimes when we go through a lot of emotional pain, that releases life force. But they're at varying degrees and varying levels. And when the karmic depth is heavier, larger sacrifices are required. That's why these conversations are important now, so that you don't get to the point of spiritual bankruptcy to such a severity that you have to lose your life, or your child has to lose her life, or whatever. And I'm talking about physical life. So it's like either deal with it now or deal with it later. Or shit, keep the cycle going. Who knows? Avoiding death is ignorant, as it restores, and I'm talking about physical death, as it restores harmony through blood loss, life force released, and tears shed. All of the same elemental components that bring things back to harmony in nature. Look at a natural disaster. All right? So next time you want to get an abortion to exercise your right of choice, if it's about the getting rid of the baby because you can't afford it, or it's not time, or you don't want a child right now, go to your local medicine woman and go the herbal route. Induce labor naturally and birth your child. Face your reflection, all of the emotions, thoughts, and sensations that you've been dodging, that the child came into form to show you and to present to you as a gift. Maybe not always a pleasant one, but it's worth it. And we are so pacified and so spoiled and so privileged that we don't even want to deal with ourselves anymore. And I'm not talking about ourselves as in our 3D personalities and character, and no, our full selves. The aspect of ourselves that were made in his image, our mind, body, and spirit. We don't want to deal with ourselves wholly. We want to deal with ourselves in a fragmented way, in a disembodied way. That's the life of a corpse. Disembodiment is living dead. So the whole point of clearing karma is to bring those parts of your trinity back into alignment so that you can actually connect to God. Not religion, not church, not the Bible. God, source. Not spirit, because spirit is just a breath that can connect you to God. So when y'all all making a character or a personality out of spirit, that's religious dogma. You just changed the fucking form. Spirit told me no, your breath changed and it was less shallow. And because it was less shallow, you were able to receive higher insights, even if just for a split second spontaneously, that guided you toward a more harmonious reality construct. That's what happened. Spirit didn't tell you anything. Spirit is not a person. Spirit is a breath. And we go through different breaths all throughout the day. And depending on our environment, we can be in shallow breaths or deep diaphragmatic breaths, and our caliber of consciousness will follow suit, as well as the manifestations that we attract into our reality. But there's levels to it. You know, if you still think the spirit, or you're using spirit and God and Jesus synonymously, but you don't realize that you are, you know, you're probably still a little disembodied. And that's what you feel like you have to do to feel supported and protected. And nobody's taking that away from you, but I'm just saying. So clinical abortion would essentially be robbing you of such a sacred opportunity, and you will have to play in blood, pain, or suffering much later, even if you fail to recognize the pattern. Right? So if you're not good at pattern recognition, which is an instinctual thing, I'm not talking about pattern recognition and computer encoding, which is similar in principle, but not the same, because pattern recognition in spirit and encoding on a computer has its distinction. But If you're not good at instinctual pattern recognition, because remember, the subconscious, nature, children, they speak in patterns. Divinity speaks in patterns, right? If you're not good at pattern recognition, you gonna fuck around having to get a clinical abortion and not even recognize when that karma circles back around and spins the block and comes back in another form. It may not be through the child. It may not be through childbearing at all. It could be through a relationship. It could be through some other extremely painful, tripled over karmic debt that you thought you escaped because you ain't got to pay for another mouth to feed, but you got to pay in another way. That's actually a lot more painful and a lot more isolating and a lot more restrictive than a fucking baby would have been, right? So, the clinical hybridized route toward abortion that lets us choose spiritual irresponsibility condones denying ourselves of the opportunity to communicate with the spirit that chose our wombs, the lessons it came to teach in life or death, and the ancestral pain, keyword, the ancestral pain hidden behind the unspoken intentions hidden behind your freedom of choice. So behind every person's rant about freedom of choice is an ancestral wound, best believe. Whether they consciously are aware of it or are willing to explore it or not, it's there and it's not going nowhere, whether a child's here or not. And this is what I'm trying to heed you to. If you can accept that and you want to deal with that, fight for your rights, sis. Do you. But I'm telling you from experience, when it doubles over, just like take the credit system, for example, if you don't pay that one debt, guess what collects? Interest. It's a similar, like they literally modeled the whole artificial system based on spiritual principles. Karmic interest does accrue, mama. It does accrue. So when you make that choice to not pay that measly $20 or $100 on your credit card, that shit ends up being $5,000 in a fucking month sometimes, depending on the interest rate. And then next thing you know, you lose your fucking credit card. Now your credit's fucked up. Your spiritual credibility will get fucked up. And you won't be able to afford yourself abundance. You won't be able to afford yourself protection. You won't be able to afford yourself ease and compassion. You'll only be able to afford yourself what can pay off that debt. You dealing with self-hatred and you not actually dealing with it, or you got self-hatred, you're not dealing with it. Hey, come manifest it. What's it called? The karmic IRS. Come take away her body autonomy. Come take away her protection real quick, cause she obviously think that she could just max out on this motherfucker and don't have to pay shit. Yeah. Oh, losing her job ain't hurt. Take her baby. Yeah, that ain't hurt. Send that nigga to beat her ass. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm being serious. I'm trying to make it practical for y'all. If you want to personify things, you know the human condition. We like to personify things to connect to them. We personify God. We personify spirit. We personify fucking synchronicities and all types of shit. So I'm personifying this for you so that you can make it practical in your mind. That interest has to be paid. And that interest will accrue. So you're not choosing or exercising any freedom of choice. That's why I said it's an illusion of choice. There's only so many times that you can push off paying off a credit debt until the credit debt company says, yeah, this bitch is not paying this. We're sending you to the credit bureau. And you know what that looks like spiritually? Yeah, she's not listening. Take away her sight. Take away her discernment real quick. Now you ain't got no discernment. Now you fucking niggas, you ain't got no business fucking. Fucking niggas that you done transcended a slew of lessons that would have allowed you to avoid that. But you done lost your discernment because you kept putting this karmic debt on pending. So now you about to get yourself in a slew of fucked up situations that are going to accrue more karmic debt. And you ain't even going to realize it until you decide that you want to pay off karmic debt. And then you'll be presented with all your debts. And that's when you going through your credit report, seeing all the things that are charged off and all that shit, so on and so forth. I hope that I'm putting it in a practical perspective for you guys. So, I'm almost done. The highly commercialized and densely marketed topic of pregnancy and childbirth on artificial timelines are often about the perfect family portraits, baby showers, gender reveals, etc. But we as women are learning through spouse abandonment, traumatizing hospital experiences, lack of daily fulfillment, and the stain on our souls that we learn to live with after clinical abortion. We're learning through those karmic manifestations that childbirth is something far more taboo, shamanic, and karmic than advertised, okay? And requires a level of internal strength, cultivated self-awareness, and receptivity to the duality of our existence to see it through to completion, right? And what I mean by receptivity to the duality of our existence, I mean life and death. I mean the illusion of good and bad. I mean pain and pleasure. This hybridized culture has us clinging to pleasure and success and feel goods and dopamine releases, and we're doubling over on that shit. That's why we addicted to Instagram. We don't respect and honor the duality of this plane. So now when karma spins the block to bring things back into balance because you all dopamined out, right? And you all pleasured out, and you all consumerismed out, huh? Oh. When you done maxed out on your pleasure, right? And on your carnal experiences, that has to come back into balance. And you have to take responsibility for that or suffer now or later. It's up to you. So, and this is my last point before the conclusion. Yes, this is on live time, and I am saving this. This last point will be the toughest pill to swallow, despite how often we witness this exact phenomena daily without knowing what we're looking at, karmically speaking. But here it goes. Sometimes a bloodline's collective karma is so severe that it requires a very large sacrifice to bring things back into harmony, such as physical death, immense suffering, or mass bloodshed. There are many forms of death that pay for our sins or karmic debts. Same thing. When they say we're born in sin, we're born with karma. When they said Jesus, who was an ascended master, who was directly connected to God because his Trinity wasn't fragmented and he wasn't disembodied, right? When they said he was born without sin, that meant he was born without karma. Ascended masters have transcended karma. You follow? So, but in more extreme cases where we have allowed superficial privileges, which is a product of shallow breath, right, to completely disconnect us from our spirits, which is holy breath, which is diaphragmatic, which is when we take in more prana, and prana is the raw form of spiritual currency or spiritual wealth that allows us to have miracles and all these euphoric, inspirational moments. The magic of life pretty much comes from prana, right? Sometimes spontaneously and sometimes intentionally, right? Jesus was able to perform miracles because he was working with a lot of prana. So are a lot of yogis and ascended masters. He wasn't the first and wasn't the last, right? So, in more extreme cases where we allow superficial privileges to connect us from our spirits, sometimes the cost is larger life force release than a simple life shift or a simple freak accident or a simple miscarriage. Sometimes more life force is required to be released, right? We know that we are disconnected from ourselves as a people when we confuse physical death for eternal death and a long physical life for eternal life. Physical death is just about the physical body. Eternal death is spiritual, right? Physical life is physical, just like physical death. Eternal life is spiritual. Okay? So conclusion. This is a really good conclusion to wrap this all up, and then I'm going to answer questions and I'm going to head out. There have been and will continue to be many things that the government, and the government is only there because people must not know how to govern themselves, right? That the government perceivably takes away from us, right? But from a karmically competent standpoint, these are actually the reparations we've been begging for. Reparations, reparations. We need reparations for the suffering that we went through. Before said suffering, how the fuck do you think we were living? We were living off the land. We were in tune with our spirits. We honored karma. Matter of fact, what's the Louisa Tish book that I always talked about? It's a magic jambalaya. The book Jambalaya by Louisa Tish is actually an African spirituality book on natural charms for women. Okay? And she speaks on karmic debt from an African spirituality standpoint. And there are certain African terms that she uses. And I remember reading it. And I remember being like, holy shit, she's talking about karmic debt. She even goes so far as to give examples of if a woman in a village, a tree branch falls on her and kills her, the shaman of the village or the elder of the village pretty much comes over and goes to the family and does a cleanse for the family because it's a karmic imbalance, right? That's when we actually had some kind of knowledge on how to maintain our own spiritual checks and balances in physicality, in spirit, and in the mental plane. We've lost that completely. We're completely crippled and vulnerable spiritually as a people. It's called Jambalaya by Louisa Tish. Okay? So these reparations that y'all ask for, y'all might only be thinking about the 3D reparations, but y'all are not realizing the spiritual and mental requirements to claim your reparations. You know how you get a reward and you got to actually claim it? You can't just claim the reparation on a purely 3D plane, like give us our land and give us our farms and give us our... No, you're going to actually have to face yourself. You're going to actually have to grow your own food, learn how to do that instinctually and in skill set because it requires integration. You need to be embodied when you're doing that, right? So that's that. So these are actually the reparations that we've been begging for. Y'all saying the government poisoned us. You're saying that I remember when I called the young, I'm not going to say her name because that's going to build up a whole other thing, but when I called out an influencer over a year ago for being primarily holistic in her brand, but giving away free Similac, yes, a lot of people understood my angle because that's not food, but then she was like, why would I waste food? And then, you know, you had a bunch of people that were like, Nikhol, why would you say that? There are mothers in need that literally have no other option. That's karmic. Okay? Furthermore, year later, Similac is recalled. Now there's an outrage. Hold up. Y'all was the same people telling me that I was wasting food from a mother in need when that shit ain't food. Okay? And whatever suffering or sacrifices or losses that mother and that baby need to deal with based on the bloodline karma has to be dealt with through suffering, through lack, and through loss, whatever. We're all going through it. It's not let's victimize ourselves. No, I'm going through it. You're going through it. She's going through it. We're all going through it. Boo fucking who? You're going to have to lose some shit. You're going to have to experience some bloodshed. You're going to have to hurt. You might get your ass beat a few times. You might get raped. Your brother might have touched you. But what you going to do about that? You going to sit and protest to something that only manifested to fucking micromanage you in your spiritual irresponsibility? You gonna go protest to that? Protest in spirit. Protest in your lifestyle. Protest in the choices that you make. Protest in the people that you decide to fuck. Protest in self-accountability. Protest in principle. Not in third dimensional dense ass efforts that deal with the symptom instead of the origin. That's the same principle that the hospitals follow that are killing everybody. The same principle that the mental homes follow that are fucking up our children and making them think they're crazy when they're really fucking gifted. And these are our shamans locked up in mental homes. And we're so fucked up as a community that we don't know how to fuck to hold them. That's what we're dealing with. So suck it the fuck up. If you claim that you're about any of this shit that I've been talking about and beyond, and grow a pair. Grow a pussy. I ain't even gonna say grow a pair because women, we the reason this shit is where it is because we've been bringing these lives into this realm. We've been fucking these hybrids. We've been fucking disconnected people. We've been fucking not honoring ourselves. Every single person on this motherfucking planet that exists got a belly button. This is our fault. So that's why I started the Collective Womb Alliance, so we can start that cleanup job. And so that we can hold ourselves accountable, and then inevitably so, our sons will be held accountable. If we fix our shit in spirit, certain shit they won't be able to get away with. Screaming at them and calling them deadbeats and dragging them. Why you think the fuck I didn't drag my baby father and this child's father and air him the fuck out? Because that's not my job. He didn't rape me. He didn't force me to lay down with him and get pregnant. I chose to do that. And I condoned his behavior for a period. The very behavior that I woke up and said, fuck that, I'm not dealing with this. I was sitting there dealing with it. And I'm a mother and he's a son. So if I condone it, he thinks it's okay. Just like with Sharu in here, if I condone some of his behavior, he's going to grow up and do that shit to his girlfriend. And she going to get her heart broken. And he's going to feel like ain't nothing wrong because I didn't say something. That's the type of influence we have. So when we hold ourselves accountable and we stop just giving up free pussy and bending over when the shit hurts and doing all this shit for dishonorable men that haven't earned their fucking keep in spirit and in the mind and in the body, because it's threefold. Just like we have to do it threefold, so do these men. But if we're not doing it threefold, how the fuck are the men going to do it threefold? We're the tastemakers. We set the example. How are they going to do it if we're not doing it? If they're not doing it, it's because we're not doing it. Period. If they're disembodied and they're building all these fucked up organizations and they're misleading the masses and they're raping and killing and whatever the fuck they're doing on varying ends of the vibrational spectrum, it's because we dropped the fucking ball. So let's pick that motherfucker up and stop whining and bitching and crying and playing victim, because it's not going to fix anything. Because guess what? After y'all finish hooping and howling on Instagram, guess what? Some of y'all still gonna have to die. Yeah? Some of y'all still gonna lose babies. Some of y'all still gonna get raped. You think that the hooping and hollering ever changed shit? Look at history. Look at the pattern. Symptomatic healing never fixed anything for anybody, ever, on any timeline. It's always about the origin. Right? So, people don't have to be clean or morally ethical to tap into their abilities. Sure don't. And that's where using this spirituality word so loosely gonna have to stop too. Are y'all automatic? Do y'all use spiritual synonymously with positive? Or do you use spiritual synonymously with purity? Because they're not synonymous. Spiritual is just dealing with the unseen. With the breath, with the mind, and with the emotions. You can be spiritual and be a fucked up individual. You can be tapped into your gifts and do disgusting fucked up things with them. You can be spiritual and heal people. You can be spiritual and scam people. So spiritual is not synonymous with purity, and spiritual is not synonymous with positive. It's just dealing with the unseen. The realm in which things are created before they assume physical form. And let all 200 people in here send something to that Cash App. Okay, but for real, it's enough folks in here. That $5 will go a long way. Facts. Shit. That's a fact. I usually don't put my Cash App in there, but people are like, girl, you crazy. Put your Cash App and get donations. You spending all this time dropping all these gems. So I'm going to leave my Cash App even after I save the recording. So show love if you want. If you don't want a Cash App, I got plenty of offerings where this can be more of a, I mean, this is reciprocal too, but where you can actually learn what I'm speaking about. Yes. Yeah. What happened? So, let me wrap this on up. So you're not ready for these reparations that y'all asked for, right? When there are food shortages, they're prompting us to get back to the land and grow our own produce again. When we are being mishandled in corporate establishments such as hospitals, we're being prompted to birth at home with our families, which will prompt families to show up in ways that they didn't have to in more sterile environments, right? And accept the potentiality, responsibility, and necessity of death without associating it with loss. So this is going to be the thread that binds our communities and our families back together. And families that attend home births are going to be forced to deal with their fears and their karmas and their restrictions and their limitations, right? So it's an all-encompassing thing. It's not just you and the baby or just you and you. You're involving everybody when you give birth, or when you give birth and it's not a physical life. Everybody's being affected in your bloodline, okay? And when they take away our rights to choose what we do with our bodies, quote unquote, we have to open our eyes and see that we still have body autonomy. But they are out of business. By they, I mean the USA Incorporated. They're out of business. So they can no longer karmically afford to initiate our blood sacrifices for us.
Mommy?
Yes.
Yes.
What happened to it? Go get it. Hold on. What happened to your house? What? What about it? I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know what you want me to do. Sure. I don't know what you want me to do. What about the house? Stop screaming. I don't have any cookies. We're actually all out.
Mommy?
Yes. So, they're all gone. It's all gone. Look, it's no more. I'm serious. Hey. Do we have a problem? I don't know what you want me to do with the house. What about it? What's wrong with it? Go get it. Go get the house. Go get it. You don't want to go get it. So I can't help you. Go get the house. I'm trying to wrap this up because I know y'all got questions. Sharu. All right, so when they take a right, yes. I don't know what you want me to do with the house. I don't know. Go get it. Sharu. Come here.
Mommy?
Come here.
Mommy?
Come here. I don't know what you want me to do with the house. You can either go get it so I can help you. Otherwise, I can't help you.
Mommy?
Yes.
Yes?
Are you talking about a house on your iPad? On the Lingo Kids?
Like a kids?
Yes, go get it. So, when they take away our right to choose what we do with our bodies, we have to open our eyes and see that we still have body autonomy, but they are out of business. So they can no longer karmically afford to initiate these blood sacrifices for us. We have to take that responsibility back into our own hands or die. And I'm not talking physical death. Yeah, put it on the table so you can see it. You got it? Yeah, go get it. So our sacrifices, be them in blood, in breath, in suffering, in pain, that's our sole responsibility. And when they take away these loans, these karmic loans that buy us time and convenience, yes? We're doing just that. We're buying time. I don't know, Sharu. I really don't. I don't know. I can't help you. I'm sorry. I tried to go in there for you to show me. You wouldn't show me. So.
Mommy?
Yes. I can't. It's all gone. It's all gone. It is.
It's not the Lego house. It's not your other house. I don't know which house it is. Why are you so like? True. Because I really don't know what you're talking about. True. Is that serious? Y'all, he's talking about a house. And usually he's talking about Legos or this little tent that he has. I don't know which house he's talking about, but he's devastated. I don't know. I don't. I don't know what you want from me. I did ask him what happened to the house. He's not, it's one of two houses. It's his little tent or his Legos. But he doesn't have the vocabulary that he needs to describe it to me yet. So, he's upset about that. So, that's my little spiel. I have about 39 questions in here, so I'm going to get through these as fast as I can. I don't even know if I can get through all of these, to be honest with you. That's like another hour. All right. Can you shed some light on cat dreams? I'll have to skip some of these. No, I can't. Do you want to see your little kids? Yeah, go. You want to go? No? If the woman can manifest, I don't understand that question. Make a form of a karmic lens on the father. You think from a karmic lens? Yes. Oh, these are some broad, open-ended questions. What you said about pregnancy. Oh gosh. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to sit here and answer all these questions. So what y'all can do? Yeah, it's right there. You see the cat? Your sibling is kicking too. I think you woke him up. It's right there. You wanna go watch? I'm getting off now. So, yeah, I gotta go. He's wilding. So what I can do is I'll do part 2 maybe this week, or I'll do it in a poll in my stories. You just threw it on the floor. You need to go to sleep. That's what you need to do. So I'll either do it in my poll or I'll do it in another live, either or. But nonetheless, thank you guys for showing up. I'm sorry I couldn't answer all y'all questions. I actually want to sit here and screenshot some of them so I can do something with them. Where'd they go? Oh, here they go.
Mommy?
Yeah.
Mommy?
I'm screenshot actually.
Yes?
I think we need to do. But these are some good questions though. Continuing all my psycho-spiritual services where you learn about your blood. Stop shop for that. I'm discontinuing all that stuff, and I'm only going to be a full-time writer. My writings will still be psycho-spiritual, just like this essay was. Yeah, you see how this essay was still grazing the topics that I covered in my initiative and all that stuff. I'll still talk about this stuff because I can't help myself. However, as far as just offering, yes. Yeah. As far as just offering the general public eye readings and the fulfillment code and stuff, I'm about to have a second kid. I think that I need to slow up on that and focus on my writings. Yes. Yes.
Mommy,
Yes.
look at it.
You threw it on the floor.
Look at it.
You want to go watch it? I need to focus on my children and my books and my intuitive marketing clients, and that's all I'm really going to be working with, as well as the Collective Womb Alliance. If you haven't subscribed to the Alliance yet, you can do so now. Remember, it's going to be the number count that really helps this take off. I'm scouting sponsors as, not for me, for mothers and things. We're going to have a sponsorship program. The chat room is already ready. Your members portal is already up and ready. I'm adding resources by the day. Every day I'm adding resources, literally. So the resources will be growing as we speak. So that's that. And then you have your Clearing Bloodline Karma bundle that comes, that allows you to have a free year membership with the Alliance. So that's something that will contain eye readings and shadow work. And I'll only be doing eye readings and shadow work within that for women and families, not for just any old body, because, hey, my priority is women and children and families. So that's the only place that I'm going to still do eye readings and shadow work and any kind of psycho-spiritual work. Everything else will be discontinued. And I'm going to be sad because I was just going through my content for the fulfillment code today. And I was like, damn, why is this my last round? But I couldn't do another round anyway because I'll be giving birth by then. And I only have 3 more openings for the fulfillment code. So if you want to participate, you can go ahead and enroll. When that's closed, I'll announce it. And that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed the live. Pardon Sharu being Sharu because he's delirious and probably needs to go to sleep. He's throwing tantrums and stuff. So I'm gonna head out. And I'll save this before Instagram does something fucked up and I can't save it. Y'all know how they get down. So, and I screenshotted all y'all questions, so I'm gonna answer them in some unique, creative way when I get the time. But yeah, hopefully I put a lot of things in perspective for y'all. Hopefully I cleared some things up, gave y'all some context. And I look forward to continuing to do that through my essays and my blog entries and my books. Surviving the Conscious Community, I look forward to releasing that in August. If I get Perfectionist Syndrome, it might be September. But that's going to be a good read too because it literally lays out my entire spiritual journey and the many ways that my karma animated on that journey, because a lot of people think that conscious journey is just this cherries and bonbons thing, but it's not. So yeah, you just got here, you missed it, so I'm gonna go ahead and close it so that you can rewatch.